Well, that's what I was going to tell people. So before we start with the official opening, I want to be sure that any of our participants that are logging on or telephone conferencing in have been welcomed to the meeting. And I don't do that. So do you know? Mr. Jones, do we have online participants?
We do, yeah.
Are they still coming on?
Slowly, but they're coming on.
Okay. Well, we'll just do a few business while we allow them to join us. As you all heard, the meeting is recorded. That's for our purposes. That's your hot mic, Mr. Wright. So I'm going to ask our executive officer if she has any announcements to make this morning before we start. Ms. Backus, welcome back.
Good morning. Good morning, President Dolan, members of the board. Yes, first of all, with respect to staff changes, we want to congratulate Diana Garofalo, who was our senior right-of-way agent in the Environmental Services and Land Management branch. She's retiring after 35 years of state civil service, and she's been with the board for 3 years as our first dedicated land management agent. And she organized and advanced the Sacramento and San Joaquin drainage districts, leases and revenues. And she has been instrumental with our board in managing and stewarding the land that we own. And so we just want to congratulate Diana and wish her all the best in her future.
We do.
We do.
Yes.
And then secondly, I just want to congratulate Ruth Darling on her promotion. She has been promoted to a program manager 2 in the flood planning and programs branch. So congratulations, Ruth. Well deserved.
Yes.
And that's all I have, Madam President.
Does anyone else have an announcement to make? I don't see anything. No hand. No, they don't get to do that. Just us. All right. Once again, good morning. Good Friday morning. My name is Jane Dolan, as you probably know, but I'm going to say that for the minutes. I'm the president of the board, and what I'm going to do is call this October 28th, 2022 meeting of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board into session. We are conducting this meeting hybrid. Lots of smiling faces here. It's nice to see that we have the opportunity to meet in person, but we will also continue to allow those to participate online and or by conference. We've found that it really works for folks that live far away and want to know and want to give input. So we've learned some things while we were in isolation. So for all of, I just lost my person. Okay. So I will call the roll. He's waving at me. Mr. Jones is the one who did, our board clerk who calls that. But we, yes, we go up.
All right, I'll call.
All right, I'll ask our executive officer to call the roll to determine if we have a quorum.
Mike.
We just love this room here.
Okay. All right. Member Ramirez. Board Member Griego. Member Countryman. Board Member Bosler.
Here?
Secretary Johnson.
I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
Vice President Valines. He's expected. He's not here yet. And President Dolan is present.
I'm here.
And there is a quorum.
We do have a quorum. We have 6 members present. We are welcoming our new member, Keely Bosler, to her first meeting. She's been here watching us before, but now you're on the dais with us, so hooray.
Thank you.
Welcome. I spoke with Vice President Valines yesterday. He said that it is likely that he will be late, but he'll get here as soon as possible, so we do expect him. So just a brief review of the agenda. I won't identify every single item. The first thing that we do is approve minutes of prior meetings. And just want to let you know, I decide at various points where we would want to take a break for a variety of reasons. We don't just run through. We plan to handle the agenda in the order that it's provided. Is that right, Mr. Wright? He nods yes, thank you. We've had the roll call. The consent agenda is an agenda of items, and there's two today that are considered routine, fully screened, or taking final action from previous discussions and direction from the board. If someone wants to talk about one or the other of those, then they're removed. Otherwise, it's one motion. Then we'll have a brief legislative update from staff, or maybe it's the one submitted. The Army Corps of Engineers will be providing two items, a levee inspection and information on what's called the Continuing Authorities Program. The Department of Water Resources has provided a monthly report to us. It's submitted. We definitely appreciate that, receiving that each month. And the department staff will present information on the annual flood risk notification program. Those of us that live in the flood zone have received that mail. More than likely, at that point, we will have a break because the next items are 3 or 4 that are all associated with the 2022 Central Valley Flood Protection Board update. So we'll take a little break while we get organized on how that will occur. There are 3 matters of corresponding contracts for the American Rivers Watershed Common Features Project. Then we will note that our staff and the branches have provided information of their monthly activity. We'll have an overview of upcoming meetings. And if we have energy and time, we will have a very brief closed session that I've attempted to do a couple times. It's for discussion of recruitment with board members, but if we don't have time, we won't do it. And that will conclude our meeting. When we have a closed session, we ask people to leave. We talk for a little bit and we come back and say, basically, we talked and we didn't take any action, but it is a private personnel talk. Then we do that at the end. So there we are. We're ready to proceed with the agenda. See if any of my board members have a comment. First thing is the approval of minutes, August 26, 2022. Secretary Johnson.
Morning, everyone. Sounds like my mic may be on. These are the August 26 minutes. I've reviewed them and I believe they're in order. You see something that I missed, please speak up before we vote. With that, I move that we approve the August 26, 2022 minutes.
The motion is before us. Is there a second to that? Second by Member Grego. Thank you. Anyone want to talk about it anymore? Nice job. I don't see the typos that the former secretary provided. So thank you for that. See who reads them, huh? Okay. At this point, I'm going to call for a voice vote. So those who are in favor of approving the minutes of August 26, 2022, board members, please say aye. Is there anyone who's opposed? Want to say nay? All right. The minutes are approved. Thank you. We now have the consent items. There are 2. 5A, Reclamation District 349. The board will be transmitting the letter of intent to the Army Corps of Engineers for preparation, development and implementation of a system-wide improvement framework for that reclamation district. Item 10B is adoption of a resolution conveying utility real estate rights for the American River Watershed Common Features Water Resources Development Act of 2016, Sacramento Weir widening. Lots of components to the American River Common Features project. So this one is to delegate authority so the project can go forward on a utility relocation. Anyone want to remove one of those items or both? I see no hands raised. Any hands raised? Board members? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Member Grego. Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Secretary Johnson. We don't discuss these because it's consent. Would you please call the roll?
Board Member Bosler.
Aye.
Board Member Grego.
Yes.
Board Member Ramirez. Board Member Countryman.
Yes.
Secretary Johnson. Vice President Belines.
Absent?
President Dolan.
Yes. Thank you. I still have paper. I'm old fashioned. We're at item number 6, which is called public comment. The purpose of this item is to allow people to make comments or ask questions that cannot be answered. This is a time for the public to make items that are questions or comments for something that is not on the agenda. We receive those, but because of the requirement of notice, we will just take them and not enter into discussion. I think you know that, sir.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, President Dolan and members of the board. I'm Dan Ramos here, and I'm representing the Wilson Ranch Partners, and we're a property owner up in the Levels Project, direction, the northern portion there.
Would
I'm
you
here to-
say the,
Levels Project, the lower Elkhorn.
and you're representing whom?
Wilson Ranch Partners, we're a property owner up in the most northern portion of that,
Okay, thank you.
of that project. And I do want to I do realize this is a matter not on the agenda and you can't comment, and I don't expect to hear any comment or any direction at that point in time. But I just want to make you aware of a situation. Hopefully, with that awareness, we can resolve an issue there. But we, Wilson Ranch Partners, we have approximately 630 acres in the very northern portion of the Levels project. And we've been involved as a property owner there in the project from day one. Also, just to happen to be, I was the president of Reclamation District 827 up there, and now it's 537. As you know, we did a consolidation of the districts, and we've been very involved as property owners and as board members of the rec districts there. And in this great project, we've been very supportive, and it's just been a real success. And I wanted to actually, I'll try to be brief because I know these guys got a long agenda, but DWR staff's been excellent. Dave Pasavina, when he first approached us as landowners up there in the districts, just really kind of sold us on this project, and we went to bat, you know, as the local representatives, landowners, and helped very much in getting that project where it is today. And we really appreciate working with the whole entire DWR staff in doing that, including Patrick Nolan, who's been represented on the land side. So what I'm here today is that I'm here seeking support and help in resolving an outstanding issue involving our property. As property owners district, you know, we've been involved for a long time, but we've turned over, basically we've about 300 acres of our property has been involved in this project. We had to turn over to the district to do the project, or turn over to a DWR to do the project. Over 3 years ago, we did that. We obviously got an offer on our land. We didn't agree with the purchase amount, and we went into negotiations, and it was a very good process. We ended up working, but we thought it was important to turn our land over to get the project going and be supportive and do all we can. And one thing I forgot to mention, but you know, we really worked hard back in the early days when this project was first kind of contemplated and being involved, and Yolo County's resistance to kind of what's going on here. We worked hard as landowners and RD districts there to support this project and bring it to fruition. And now we got Yolo County on board, and they've been very active and very, very cooperative in these kind of projects. So I think we worked hard with you to get that turned around. But I just wanted, it's been a real supportive effort. But bottom line, we've been involved with, to get compensated for our property. We turned over our property, and that put us into a situation where we got turned over to the Attorney General's office in negotiating the deal. We did our appraisals, we did one, they did one, and guess what? We've got a price, we agreed. We were about 10% off it. This is about 6 months ago, we kind of went through this process. Let's sit down and finish this thing and get it done. We haven't heard a word in 6 months. It's been crickets, and it's been very frustrating. There seems to be no accountability. We get Attorney General's office, who our representatives points back to DWR and says, well, they haven't agreed to anything, and I've talked to my DWR reps, but basically Patrick Nolan, who's been excellent. He said, Dan, sorry, but this is in the Attorney General's hands. So we're caught in this limbo, and we just want to get our property paid for and move on and keep supporting this project. It's been, like I say, it's been a great effort. So that's just what I wanted to share with you today. I realize there's no action is going to be taken or anything like that, but hopefully someone can reach out to us or someone can communicate to us what's going on so we can get compensated. Anyway, that was it. And just all of us, we've participated in I have many DWR meetings, seminars, talks on flood control projects, especially on implementing beneficial projects, multi-beneficial projects. Was recently last week at the CCV, our Central Valley Flood Control Association Flood Forum. And we talk about how we do these projects nowadays in terms of these multi-beneficials. And it seems like the renaissance, the big issue that comes up all the time is trust. And especially with landowners and local maintaining agencies from there up, everybody working together to get these great projects done. And we've done that. I mean, we've done that. We've got a great project here with Levels, and we hope to continue that effort there. It's been really good. I know the new RD District 537, we're working so closely with SAFCA and the DWR staff and getting that project in with the contractors. It's been a great effort. In closing, I just like you to look into the matter for compensation of our property. I know we didn't close the session today. We do have an item on your closed session. It's item 14D. It's with Young Farms. Very similar situation to us. They're the property owner to the south of us. Obviously, we'll have some discussion in closed session. Maybe some representatives that are involved with our issue will be there, and you can question them at that time. But that's all we're asking for is just to get compensated and move on and just complete this great project. We really appreciate.
Mr. Ramos,
Yes.
we hear you.
I'm rambling on.
You're-
Sorry.
You are,
about that.
no, you're not rambling. You have a concern. We hear you.
Okay.
You're recorded. I would expect there'll be.
Thank you very much.
something.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you. Are there any other folks that wish to provide a public comment that might be briefer?
I don't see any hands up.
No hands up? No one hands up in the room, so thank you. Mr. Soon, are you going to, where are you? You're going to say it's submitted or you want to make a comment? All right. We received a legislative update from board staff Darren Soon, who's our policy advisor on legislation. So he's provided that. He gave us more extensive information on what legislation actually passed and was signed. This time, things are just a bit dormant. Lots of activity in Washington, D.C., not a lot of action. I gave you a report. All right. We will move on to item 8A, Fairfield Vicinity Stream Group Channel Only Project. Board staff Eric Mao will introduce this item. Good morning.
Good morning, President Dolan. And good morning, everyone. Vice President Alliance, Executive Officer Backus, and the members.
Mr. Mao, just brief. I did not see that our vice president arrived, so welcome. We need to say, we now have a full complement of, this is the 7-person board. Thank you for
Wow.
making that.
That is, yeah.
Clapping for the
Fantastic.
7th member and the one who was just a bit late. We knew you were, so thanks for making that effort. All right, back to you, Mr. Mao. Thank you.
Okay, great. And welcome, Ms. Bosler. My name is Eric Mao, and I want to introduce Ms. Emily Green from the United States Army Corps of Engineers, or USACE. Emily is currently the acting chief of the inspection section at the USACE Sacramento District. And she'll be giving a short presentation regarding her team's inspection findings of the Fairfield Vicinity Streams Group, which is a channel-only project, so there are no levees here. After her presentation, I will return to give board staff's analysis regarding the inspection. And after my presentation, if there are any additional questions, the local maintaining agencies or the LMAs are present to answer them. Emily Corwin and Alvin Lay are joined virtually on behalf of the Fairfield Sassoon Sewer District. And so with that, I'll turn this over to Emily for her presentation.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Eric, for that introduction. Good morning, President Dolan and members of the board. Again, my name is Emily Green, and I'm very happy to be here today and have the opportunity to discuss the results of our recent inspection on the Fairfield Vicinity Streams Group project.
Can you raise the mic or
Yeah,
step that way?
sound better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right, so I'll go ahead and jump right in. Next slide, please. So this project is located in the city of Fairfield and Sioux City, both in Solano County. As Eric mentioned, this project is a little bit unique that it does not include levees. The project is made up of 8 miles of flood risk reduction channel only. So there were no federally authorized levees constructed as part of this project. I would like to note, while there are no levees, the inspection process is very much the same for a channel project. Really, the only difference is the rating criteria that we are using is a little bit different. We're utilizing our channel rating criteria versus the levee embankment criteria. So looking at the map of the 2 blue polygons show the project limits. They are 2 discontinuous reaches about 4 miles in length each, located to the east and west of the 2 cities. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot of the report card. The highest rated item you can see is the unacceptable yellow, which rolls up to an M on the report card, which is an unacceptable observation not likely to prevent performance in the next flood event. Categories where the unacceptable yellow were observed are in the vegetation and obstructions, encroachments, and erosion categories. Next slide, please. All right, so finally, we have a few examples of observations that we saw during our inspection. All of these received an unacceptable yellow rating. So we'll start at the top left, picture number 1. This is showing a bridge crossing over the channel. Based on available documentation, this appears to have been constructed after the federal project and no permit was found. So the main concern is how this bridge will impact channel capacity and can it still pass the authorized flow. Photo number 2, we're looking at that red circle that's showing a concrete vault on the upper right bank, which is an indication of a pipe crossing under the channel. There is limited information on what type of pipe this is. Again, there was no permit found for this encroachment. It's unclear what it carries, if or how it is maintained, and it's unknown if this pipe has potential to harm the channel integrity. Photo number 3, in the bottom left, this is showing a beaver dam. Where the vegetation is cleared, you can see the water ponding behind the dam. And our main concern with this is if the dam is left unmaintained, it may start to inhibit channel capacity. And finally, photo number 4, erosion on the left bank. So to help orient you in this photo, on the top left of the photo, you can see the top of the maintenance road. So it's a pretty shallow channel. Excuse me. Pretty shallow channel here. The height of the erosion does extend the full bank, and it reduces the cross-sectional width of about 2 feet. Concerned with this observation, if left unrepaired, the erosion would progress and further compromising the integrity of the channel. So that concludes my piece of the presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do I understand correctly that the unacceptable items that you identified do not reflect PL 8499 status at this point?
Correct, yes. Actually, for all of our channel non-levy projects, the PL 8499 eligibility is, it's suspended, it's frozen on where it was when the latest regulations came out, which was 2014. So all of our channel projects, including this one, were active in the PL 8499 rehab program, and it remains active regardless of the results of the inspection.
Well, I'm sure the city has been told and we're going to work on it. Okay. Any questions, board members, comments?
Sorry, just say it one more time.
Member Ramirez?
About now, that's better. I just missed what you said about something's on hold and so everything's still active. Can you say it one more time?
Of course, yeah. For projects that are non-levied, we call them channel-only projects. The eligibility status for the rehab program was suspended in 2014 when the latest guidance came out about how to determine eligibility for PL 8499.
Got it.
And it's suspended until further guidance is provided, which it has not been at this time.
Got it. Okay, that helps because I was looking at the inspection, the chart for a levy project, and they're not the same, obviously. It sounds like this program is waiting for further direction, so.
For the eligibility, correct.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Member Countryman?
To your knowledge, is there any problem getting a permit from the Corps to clean the channel out with where the vegetation is? I know on the Pajaro River, that was a big problem over there, that the people doing the inspection said the vegetation's got to go, and the regulatory part of the Corps wasn't issuing them a permit to clean the vegetation. I'm just wondering what the status of this is.
My knowledge of the regulatory permit, I don't know how confidently I can speak to that. As far as 408 permits go, I can say one should not be needed to clear vegetation as that's required. It's routine maintenance as identified in the owner
Oh,
manual.
good, thank you.
Through the chair.
Member Grego?
Okay. Is this just collecting drainage water?
I believe so. I would need to look into the project documentation to be more confident on that answer. But I believe it's just drainage water from the surrounding residential areas.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any other questions? This is an information presentation. Do we have people online who wish to make a comment? Mr. Mao, do you know who they are?
Yes, we do have folks from the Fairfield Sassoon Sewer District that
Okay.
can speak and maybe answer Ms. Griegel's question. I'll give the board staff's presentation first, and then if we have more questions, they can answer that.
Okay,
Okay,
please proceed.
thank you. So I'll have to wait for our board clerk to put up my presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so again, Eric Mao, board staff, and I'll just be sharing some findings based on the inspection information. First, I'd like to just provide a little bit more background information. Next slide, please. So some background information. The city of Fairfield signed a memorandum of agreement with the United States Army Corps of Engineers in May 29, 1986 for the maintenance and of recreational development in the Fairfield vicinity streams. So that's how that the name was, we have that name. The board, formerly the Reclamation Board, we also signed an assurance agreement on the same day, May 29, 1986, as non-federal sponsor. Next slide, please. The City of Fairfield's MOA and our insurance agreement are part of the O&M manual, so they are properly documented. And per the July 8, 1993 Army Corps transfer letter, the City of Fairfield is to operate and maintain the Fairfield vicinity streams. This project is authorized through California Water Code 12666. So just to clarify that all this is documented and it's part of the California Water Code. Just quickly going through the next few slides, it's just again the vicinity map of Fairfield. Next slide, please. Right, here's just for folks who are not familiar with Solano County, southwest of the city of Sacramento. Next slide, please. The next slide is a site map similar to what Emily has shown in her presentation. It may be a little hard to see, but there were 29 unacceptable yellow items, 41 minimally acceptable items, and 63 acceptable items. And they're shown here, also found in the final report if you want to know exactly where they are. And finally, my last slide is again just the report card that was shown. So with that, that ends my presentation. If Emily or Alvin, if you're on the line, if you'd like to speak on anything, or if there are further questions from the board, we can try to answer them. Thank you.
Would you give me their full names, please? Emily, what?
I'm sorry, Ms. Emily Corwin.
Ms. Corwin, do you want to make a comment? we
Hi,
can.
thank you. Yes, this is Emily Corwin. I'm a senior environmental engineer with the Fairfield Sassoon Sewer District. Good morning to the board and thank you to Eric and Emily for your presentations and your coordination and production of this report. I just want to convey our plan to respond to the inspection findings. And this is on behalf of both the cities of Fairfield and Sassoon City. We've reviewed and received the report. And during the next 5 years, this would be before the next Army Corps of Engineers inspection of the Fairfield Vicinity Stream Group, the cities plan to address the items as unacceptable during this inspection. And some of the ways that we plan to do that are where encroachments are identified without permits or as-built, we'll coordinate with the Bureau to locate best available information about the encroachment. Any permits or as-built that will locate will be collected and provided to the Army Corps of Engineers prior to the next inspection. We also, where there are vegetation and obstructions, the city will conduct improved maintenance activities consisting with existing permits. And specifically for us, one of the limiting factors are approvals from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to demonstrate that those vegetation and obstructions would not impair capacity. And there was a question about if they're drainage systems, and they are. These are Laurel Creek and Leadwood Creek, which are two significant streams that run through the cities of Fairfield and Sassoon City before discharging to the Sassoon Marsh. They also receive stormwater runoff from the adjacent urban areas. So happy to answer any other additional questions.
Thank you for that information. Board members have questions of Ms. Corwin? I see none. Is there someone else?
Nope, no one else. Just like to, again, thank the Corps, Emily's team, Fairfield and Sassoon City for their assistance. It really takes, they were quick to respond when we needed to set up an inspection, and they got their team out there, and it was very successful. So thank you to everyone, and
Thank you
that
for
ends my
that.
presentation.
All right. Let me ask at this point, is there anyone in our audience in person who wants to make a comment on this? I see nothing. Do we have any hands raised from our online participants? Apparently not. So thank you. We'll move on to the next item 8B. Melissa Weimiller, I understand, is participating online.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you, President Dolan and members of the board for allowing me to present today. If it's possible, I can go ahead and share my own slides, and hopefully you guys can see that in the room there. Just let
There's a
me know
reflection
when you
on
can
that
see
glass, but yes, if you were here, you'd know I'm signaling people in a glass wall room, but they're nodding that yes, and there it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so hello, I'm Melissa Weimiller. I am a project manager and our tribal program manager underneath the flood risk management program of the Sacramento district. And we wanted to present to you today on the continuing authorities program because it's kind of underutilized in California, but also because with the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, there's been a lot more funding put into this program. So we think that there are opportunities to expand it throughout California, and so we wanted to bring this program to your attention. As you're probably aware, Army Corps actually does a lot of things outside of flood. We do, coastal storm risk management as well. We do navigation. We actually do quite a bit of ecosystem restoration. And then some of the other things we can do under some of our technical programs are water supply and quality, emergency response. We try to build in recreation to a lot of our projects. We also do cultural resource protection under our tribal partnership program. I will highlight demonstrate that quickly as well today. And then we do, again, technical and planning assistance. So I just kind of want to set the stage of where the continuing authorities program sits within our larger USACE authorities. We have our congressionally authorized projects. I think that's what most folks are familiar with, our dam and levee projects. Then we have the delegated authorities that includes the continuing authorities program. They're supposed to be smaller and quicker. And then we have our technical assistance programs to where we do assistance only, but no construction. So just to dive into those three categories a little bit more, as you're aware, our big dam and levee projects under congressionally authorized studies is that we need authorization from Congress to do the study and to do the implementation. And then we also need the appropriations for the funding. And it's typically at least 5 years from the initial funding of the study to the start of construction, though I think most of you know that typically it can be a little bit longer than that. And so that's why we have the benefit of these delegated authorities that we have. They're supposed to be projects that are smaller, so limited scope and complexity, but these programs are funded programmatically by Congress. So we don't need to go back to Congress to specifically authorize projects for the study or for implementation. So typically 3 to 5 years from the initial funding is when we can start construction. So they move a lot quicker. And so this includes the Continuing Authorities Program, our Tribal Partnership Program, and then our Environmental Infrastructure Authority, which is an authority we can do water supply and wastewater projects underneath. And then we have the technical assistance programs. You may be aware of these. We've done probably hundreds of these in California under our Floodplain Management Services Authority, our Planning Assistance to States Authority, where we can look a little bit outside of flood risk and look at water resources problems in general. And then obviously we do emergency preparedness and response as well. So this is just general technical services and planning assistance. Some of it we can do 100% federally funded. Sometimes there's a cost share. It just kind of depends on the scope of the project. But I just wanted to highlight, I manage those programs as well. But to now dig into the weeds of why we're here is the Continuing Authorities Program. It's actually 9 different authorities. The name, it doesn't really help us talk about exactly what it is. But like I mentioned, limited scope and complexity. Our planning process is a little bit shorter than a typical larger feasibility study. We have fewer kind of check-in milestone meetings that helps us streamline a bit more. The cost share does vary with the authority, but the real benefit of this program is that the first $100,000 is completely federally funded. We're trying to determine if there is federal interest in this project before we're asking a partner to cost share with us. So as I mentioned, there's 9 different authorities. All highlight our flood damage reduction, our aquatic ecosystem restoration, and our erosion authorities. But we do have authorities in storm damage reduction, navigation. Another one that is typically used is 1135, the one on the bottom, which is project modifications for improvements to the environment. So if we're modifying an Army Corps project for the benefit of the environment, we can do it under the Continuing Authorities Program. There's also a cost share waiver for federally recognized tribes of $530,000 that I believe is being increased to $665,000. We're waiting for that official letter. But the other thing under IIJA is that there is some authority to do ecosystem restoration projects for 100% federally funded if they're looking at fish barrier passage. So there are some unique opportunities that IIJA opened up as well. So just to dive into some of the authorities that I think will be of most interest, our Section 14 is our Emergency Stream Bank Protection Authority. So this is, where we're looking at riprap or sheet pile to protect public facilities that are in imminent danger of failing. So obviously roads, bridges, hospitals, schools, treatment plants, water and sewer lines, kind of anything under that public facility category. So it's things that are caused by natural erosion as well, stream flow, wind-driven waves, et cetera, and not by things like inadequate drainage or by the facility itself or operation of this facility. We had a project we tried to investigate. Some of the erosion was being caused by releases from a dam, and so that did not qualify under this project. Our planning process is a little bit different under this authority, where we're looking at the least cost alternative plan is if it's justified, or we look at the economic justification a little bit different, where we pick the least cost alternative plan to implement. So it's not the typical benefit to cost justification that we're looking at in our other continuing authority programs or in our general investigations, those big projects. So this one is a little bit more unique and really is looking for how can we help in those kind of emergency situations. They are supposed to be smaller, so there is a $5 million federal limit, and the study is cost shared, that 50-50 after that $100,000 that I mentioned, and then the construction and cost shared, 65% federal and 35% non-federal. Our Section 205 is where we do our flood damage reduction. So we do small projects. They still have to be under 800 CFS, but, you know, not large like, you know, our Sacramento River and our American River projects. They have to be have been part of a specifically authorized project by Congress or part of a larger project. So we can't just like pick and choose pieces out of a bigger project to get them through quicker. They have to be independent. And they need to be economically justified, but they can include comprehensive benefits justifications. You may have heard about this as a new memo to really look at all of the benefits of our projects besides just economics. Like, let's look a little bit more into our environmental benefits, to our benefits to underrepresented communities, that type of thing we really want to move forward with under the Continuing Authorities Program. This one is a little bit bigger than the other one. We have a $10 million limit, but the cost share is the same, 50-50 and 65-35 for the study and construction. And the other one here I'll highlight is our aquatic ecosystem restoration. Again, these are on smaller scales than some of our bigger congressionally authorized projects would be. But then again, under the IIJA, it allows for 100% federally funded projects that help restore fish and wildlife passage by removing those in-stream barriers. So there might be some opportunities throughout California to look into this one as well. And again, $10 million federal limit, and the cost share again is the same on these. So our process, after we determine that the Continuing Authorities Program is the right fit for the project, we move into our feasibility phase. So we need a request letter from the partner, and then we move into what's called the federal interest determination. So that's where I said we've got the 100% federally funded for the first $100,000. And really that's where we're determining whether or not there's federal interest. We don't want to go into a project, you know, for flood risk reduction, and then we realize that we can't economically justify the project. So we really want to put in that federal funds first to determine that. Once we've done that and we've determined that there is interest, we would move forward with signing the feasibility cost share agreement and developing the project management plan. We complete the report, which obviously includes NEPA, and then the approval level for these types of projects doesn't go actually all the way to our headquarters office. It's actually, we receive approval from our division office in San Francisco. We would then move into the design and implementation phase. Essentially, we're just waiting for funding once that report is approved because we don't have to go back to Congress. So we would execute our project partnership agreement. We would then move into developing our design documents, what are our plans and specs, and then really moving forward into, awarding the contract for doing the design and the construction. And then we have to do adaptive management and monitoring, if applicable on some projects. We develop our operations and maintenance manual, and then we turn over the project to the sponsor for ownership and operations and maintenance. So it's like our other projects, but just a little bit more streamlined. I also did want to highlight the Tribal Partnership Program because it's very, very similar to the Continuing Authorities Program, but for federally recognized tribes, there's a lot of financial benefits to this program. So the study is cost shared, kind of the same, 50-50, and construction is cost shared. But there is that cost share waiver that's been increased to, we think, $665,000 for the study and construction. And this is to really do some of the similar things that the Continuing Authorities Program does: flood risk management, environmental restoration, and then additionally, we can do preservation of cultural and natural resources as well. We can also do watershed assessments under the Tribal Partnership Program, which has a little bit better cost share of 75% federal, 25% non-federal. And then one of the other benefits of this project is there's an ability to pay provision. If the per capita income for the tribal partner is less than 2/3 of the counties of the United States, and we estimate that every year, then the cost share is further reduced to 25% after the waiver is applied and after the typical cost share is applied. So essentially, it looks like for a study portion, 12.5% of the project study is paid by the tribal partner, and that's after the cost share waiver. So if we're looking at a $3 million study, typically the cost to the tribe is around $300,000. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. So any questions or comments from the board?
Do board members have any questions? Ms. Weinmiller? Yes. Member Bosler?
Yes, good morning. I just think this is a really great opportunity to accelerate some of the work that we need to do in the Central Valley Flood Protection Area. And so I just would love to have a report back at some point about projects that have been identified to go after this funding, because it seems like a really great opportunity that the federal government has opened up for us. So that's just my request, I guess.
That's what I was going to say, so thank you for that. It would be great if we made this question, what projects can we put forward for this or encourage others to? Member Johnson?
I would echo that, and really thank you for coming in. It's been my sense that people in California sometimes sleep on the Continuing Authorities Program, Section 206 in particular, and maybe 205 as well. People, maybe assuming they think of the Corps in a particular way from other types of projects and what that process is like. Or imagining a nexus to an authorized project that doesn't necessarily have to exist for these programs. So thank you. And I do hope that, especially with the IIJ money, there are opportunities out here.
It's an information item, but it looks like we're going to give directions to see what we can do. Member Grego?
I too appreciate the amount of information that we got today. And when I look at sediment management, I can't help but think about the Yuba River. The Yuba River, because of the hydraulic mining up in Nevada County, the results were all the sediment that came through that river and continues to this day. I mean, the Yuba River, in regards to the hydraulic mining, was the first environmental bill law determination legally. And today, 2022, we're still plagued by that sediment. So I'm curious if this is something, this sediment management is something that could be used in that case.
Possibly. I would just say I would worry that the cost might exceed the authority. I know that we had the Yuba River Ecosystem Restoration Study a couple of years ago, and there was a plan identified and it's been authorized. We just currently don't have a partner to move forward with the design and construction of that authorized project. So we would have to look at what was the scope of that and what could be the scope of a different project and make sure that they wouldn't overlap and that we wouldn't be interfering with a currently authorized project.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here this morning. Member Countryman.
I'm quite impressed with the idea that the Corps can do a project from beginning to completed construction in 3 to 5 years. Have we actually had any examples of that?
Yes, throughout the country, there have been quite a few projects. I would say there is one that the San Francisco district is working on for Dry Creek, and they have met that timeline. I think they're still working on the construction, but yes, that is one recent example that's in the San Francisco district.
Well done.
You have some experience with that, right? Board members, anything, any other input? How about our in-person audience? No hands raised, our online audience. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Really appreciate you being here today. And I think that our executive officer heard a number of board members say we would like to look to see if there are projects that we can advance or encourage others to do that.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to present, and hopefully next time I will be presenting on one of our active projects under this program. So I look forward to our partnership opportunities, and yes, please contact me with any questions or any opportunities to look at projects. We have funding that we can conduct site visits with, so we're excited about the future opportunities.
Thank you very much. We do look forward to seeing you again. I know. Okay, I think we concluded that item, so thank you all. I have a board member who has a question for item 7, so we're backing up to item 7. Member Boslow has a question on legislation.
Yeah, no, I wanted to just highlight that at the end of the legislative session, there was a significant agreement on a large general fund outlay for various projects related to water and water resilience, including flood, and many projects that could have multi-benefits that include flood protection. So I just think it would be really interesting at a further meeting, after meetings with Department of Water Resources and others, to really start to map out how some of these funds that are not specified for specific projects in many cases are going to further what we need to get done here in the Central Valley. So that's just my request, because in total, the last 2 years, there's almost $9 billion of general fund money. Also, if people have been paying attention to the economics that are happening, it's possible that some of that is going to get spread out, cut back. We need to be on the record about things that are really important for us to preserve and to keep making progress on in the Central Valley. So I think that's just something I would love to get a report back after, obviously, lots of conversations with the rest of the administration, some of which is being implemented by Resources Agency, Department of Water Resources, Department of Conservation, but many areas where there's going to be a lot of synergies with what we're trying to do here in the Central Valley.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and welcome to your first board meeting, Board Member Bosley.
Well, that sounds like a very good thing to do.
Yeah.
So let's not leave it as a very good thing to do, and let's have that conversation. Yeah, we're aware that there's money there. It does have the word flood on it, so maybe we can talk about our needs and see how we can all coordinate and get something done.
Fantastic. Thank you. Will do.
Sometimes I'm actually glad our meetings are recorded. That's my agenda. All right, now we'll go back to the numerical order. Item 9A, the monthly report that Department of Water Resources provides to us has been received. I understand it's submitted. We do read it. Just briefly, did anyone read it and want to ask a question? That's the written monthly report. It's usually Mr. Countryman. Okay, then we'll go on. Are you Mr. War? All right, we're at item 9B, Flood Risk Notification Program. Levi War, Department of Water Resources. Good morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning, President and board members. My name is Levi War. I'm a senior engineer with the California Department of Water Resources. I'm the manager of the Floodplain Assistance Unit within the Floodplain Management Branch. And today I'm going to be talking to you about our flood risk notification program that I manage. Next slide, please. Today I'm going to go over with you, I'm going to quickly highlight the program. I'm going to show you an image of our 2022 flood risk notification mailer that we sent out this year. I'm going to show you some common questions that we get from the public that receives the mailer and some of the program benefits that this program brings to the public. Next slide, please. This program is an annual notification that we send to property owners throughout the Central Valley that notifies them of their flood risk. It's legally mandated to be sent out every year in the California Water Code. That DWR mails it out every year, and we send out over 280,000 mailers every year. And this year we're approaching very near 300,000. So every year it's been increasing a little bit from new addresses that we're getting to mail to.
More development in the flood risk area,
Yes, always suggested.
not in my county.
No. Next slide, please. Here you can see an image of the mailer that we sent out. This is a 8.5 by 11 standard size. We tri-fold it when we mail it, so you can see there on the left side where the folds go, and each one is specific to the addressee. So we put their actual address on there, their name, and then we also tell them what is threatening what levy threatens their property from the flooding, from the possible flooding. So kind of gives them some personalized information so they know where their risk is coming from. We give them the facts. It talks about suggesting that they should have insurance, flood insurance, and we give them the phone number to the NFIP program. If they have further questions for NFIP, they can give them a call. We give them some of those tips you can see there to help with flooding. Our website for DWR is on there with our specific flood risk section where they can go into our website and they can even put in their address and see their specific flood risk, things like that. And it gives them other tips and tricks on the website. And then we have a specific email for this program for people to communicate through email. If they ever get any questions or concerns or anything like that, they can email us, we'll reply to them. And then we also have we call it our hotline, our 1-800 number that they can call in with any questions, things like that. We have that in English and Spanish, and that is fully monitored. And if anyone has a question, we do have people that call them back and try to get them answers for some of their concerns or questions. Next slide, please. Some of the monitoring those calls becomes a pretty big undertaking each year, and we get a lot of different things coming in through those hotlines. The most typical things that we'll see is people looking for help to identify their specific risks. So once we get their address, we're able to plug them in with, the online resources, and we help them with looking at their exact flood risk, where their property might be at risk. We get a lot of insurance questions on there. Some people thinking maybe they do need insurance or they don't need insurance, or more questions like that. And our most typical response is for them to call their normal insurance broker, who they deal with all the time, and ask them about adding flood insurance. And this seems to go over well because once you tell them to talk to somebody who they're already familiar with, they know that you're not really trying to sell them anything. So they feel more comfortable with somebody who they're already paying maybe their auto insurance or things like that through. So they seem to like that, and it goes well that they can go with somebody that they already know. We do get complaints about the flyer, about it being a waste or junk or things like that. So we also take those. We get people who are looking for maybe some local contact numbers, some, agencies that might maintain local levies and things like that. And we're able to connect to those people with what they're looking for. And then we also, we pull all the parcel data every year in around April. And sometimes by the time we send these out in September, some people have moved or things like that. So some people want to call us or email us and say, hey, this isn't my property anymore, or I just moved here and got this and it's not my name on here. So we try to note those, but every year when we're pulling that new data, we try to maintain those, but sometimes it's difficult with the large amount of data that we're working with. Next slide, please. The bulk of our flyers that go out go to just a standard single owner, one parcel on one property, and that's the only property that they own. This year we had about 270,000 go out to single parcel owners, and then the rest, about 20 or 30,000, went to what we call multi-property owners or public agencies. Multi-property owners are if you own 2 or more properties within the floodplain. you're going to get you're going to get this cover letter with a blank flyer, and the cover letter will explain to you that you own more than one property. It will list your addresses and your flood threats on that so that you can see it for multiple properties. And then if a public agency happens to own property in a flood risk zone, we'll send one to them. And the letter, if you read over it, kind of says like, you should tell your tenants that this is a risk, or you should tell your employees that you are living in a risk, just to heighten that awareness. Next slide, please. Some of the benefits of the program is it informs properties of their flood risk. We help increase funding for local, state, and flood management support. It provides CRS credit for communities, and it also meets that legal mandate and the legislative intent of the mandate when it was originally put into law. Next slide, please. The CRS that I just mentioned, the community rating system, it's a voluntary incentive program for communities that go above and beyond the NFIP minimum requirements to mitigate their flood risk. The CRS does have an award. If you, depending on the level that you go in the CRS, the community can actually provide an insurance discount to their members. And that insurance discount can go all the way up to 45% off their premiums. So the flood risk notification program, with the wording that we've put in there, does suffice that. So some of these communities are getting points just for us doing this FRN mailer, and they don't have to accrue any of that, and they are getting a benefit for the CRS points. So as long as they do enough, they can actually give a discount to their citizens, it's a popular program, and it's nice that we can help them with this program that we're already working on. Next slide, please. This presentation is normally given before October, but we always like to plug our California Flood Preparedness Week, which is we're actually in the midst of, we're coming up on the end of, but DWR works through California Flood Preparedness Week to work with other agencies and kind of get the word out about flooding, and we work with federal, local, and other state agencies and in shows and just social media, things like that, to push out awareness about Flood Week. Try to help make sure people are prepared. Next slide, please. Last one. That's all I have. Is there any questions for me?
I do have one. Given that climate change is upon us and we don't know when or where there will be intense storms, but we know they will occur, is there any interest or movement to change this to flood preparedness and eliminate the week?
We do, well, especially where I work, we're talking about flood preparedness quite often.
So are we.
Yes, I know. And so I think we take that week because we can focus it down to do more. I mean, I'm not an expert. Flood Preparedness Week isn't my thing, so I don't know.
I think it's historically established because historically we had rain during a certain season. Now we get storms whenever they occur. We certainly have improved science regarding that. And part of what we're doing today is adopting the update to the plan that is very science-based on climate change and has an excellent array of things that need to be done, as yet unfunded, but hey, we're going to get it. But we've seen what's occurred across the nation, and it's certainly not during my childhood flood season. So I don't know. I think it's like earthquakes. You just need to know what you need to do if this occurs, and we don't know when it's going to happen. But
yeah, and the more reminders, the better.
But having a certain time during the year that we intensify our outreach and events and media is good. So I see that's what we're doing.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you for being here. I didn't mean to surprise you on that.
That's all right.
Board members have any questions? Okay. Mr. Mearsbar, are you going to talk?
I brought backup.
I see him catching off of his seat. Good morning, Mr. Mearsbar.
Thank you. Again, my name is Michael Mearswar. I'm the State Floodplain Manager with the Department of Water Resources. And I wanted to add one thing for context as to the timing of both the Flood Preparedness Week and in particular the annual flood risk notification flyer that we send. The intent of having the flyers first sent in September of each year and then the Flood Preparedness Week, which is really a media force multiplier where local agencies across the state combined efforts, share messaging to get attraction from newspapers, television, and radio outlets, is so that individual property owners will be encouraged to buy flood insurance. Flood insurance policies take about 30 days before they become effective. And historically, we have a wet season that's starting in mid-October, but with climate change, that's changing a little bit. But we still know that the most intense storms, the most likely period for actually having flood losses, is in the November, December, January, February time period. So our intent is that people are economically protected for recovery. I just wanted to put that out there.
No, thank you for that. I'm certain there's a lot of people in Florida that wish they had done that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's stunning. No, it is important to promote that. So thank you for that information. You coming back? You have more comments?
Oh, I just, if, yeah.
I liked your, if we'll get your PowerPoint, that's very helpful and we can share it on our own. Is anyone in the audience that wants to share information or observations? Anyone with their hands raised? Where is? Sarah Backus has her hand raised. Did you want to talk?
I didn't.
That's our executive officer. She could have just tapped my shoulder. Member Ramirez.
There it is. The notification is Central Valley,
Yes.
right? It doesn't say that on the website. It's in some of the drop downs, but maybe there's a way to flag that for people. I know there's 1,000 things you could say, and this is one thing that they get, but they have to get it, right? It's legally required they get something in the mail.
Yes.
And it's a challenge to try to think about the audience because they're so diverse and there's so many different people, and what would gravitate with one person might not with the next. But you guys are very sophisticated. You might think to try to find some of these folks and ask them what would really help. Because I want them to have, and I think it's important for people to have that larger context. If you live by a levee, you might just think that that's all that there is, right? And it's just, there's a larger landscape to see. And when you go to the site, like I'm on your website right now, that's what I'm looking at. It'd be nice to have some of that there. I know it's hard because you're thinking about a lot of people. But you might just ask people who are getting the notices what they think. It doesn't really matter what I think, but it'd be good to know what the people on the ground think. Like maybe there's a way that you guys could help dial in some of this for them so they could really go, oh, I get that, right? Like I didn't know that. So anyway, I just wanted to provide a little context. And if you could flag it maybe in a way that would really resonate with the fact that the valley, which is part of that larger landscape, is what we're trying to get people's attention for, that might also help. Just a thought.
Yeah, it's good thought. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Not everyone knows what SPFC means.
And I'd like to, as a clarification, ask, are you looking at our, the flood risk website right now? Yeah, thank you. In that, you're looking at the levee flood protection zone maps?
No, I'm looking at where he told us to go, my flood risk notification page.
Just the general sort of entry landing page. Okay.
Yep.
I like what your point is, and I just wanted to add something in there to leverage it. I've been a big fan of this particular program and would hope at some point in time, this is my personal opinion, not a statement from the department, but as a floodplain manager, that we should be expanding this statewide. And we are the first state that does this in a limited area within the Central Valley. And as Levi had indicated, in addition to helping people get their flood insurance, it does result in communities getting points towards getting discounts for their flood insurance at a time where flood insurance across the United States is increasing. So that is a substantial benefit that's sitting out there. But there is one other thing I want to point out. There is a GIS layer that we have that shows the levee flood protection zone maps. And it's a double-edged sword because those maps are also somewhat confusing, but we do go through every year and update those maps. So as climate changes, we can go through and actually show a larger area. And our levee flood protection zone maps are larger than the FEMA flood insurance rate maps that are out there, where we go through and break the levees. And we'd be happy to give a more detailed presentation on that particular product at some point in time to this board.
Yeah,
I would think that homeowners want to know, am I at risk? What can I do? Plus what we all say, when's it going to happen?
and we're both at the spectrum. I appreciate the statewide context, and I keep zooming back in on just the valley, which is a big part of the state, right? Maybe it's worth having a bridge from our website to this, or something that just says, because if people are in the Central Valley and they're looking for flood stuff, then they might logically go to our webpage. Maybe there's a way to connect it so that they can be pointed here and they can then get that information. Anything that we can do to help people who are already living in an area the state has a responsibility, I think would be really great. So
That would be lovely. We'll put that on the list of many things that need to be done to improve our website. But we can perhaps do that and not wait for others. Yes, Member Bosler?
I'm just wondering if you also coordinate with local emergency managers during this week to push out notifications, because local emergency services managers are always looking for ways to have their community better prepared for whatever ailment, like whatever the disaster is, but flood certainly for many of our Central Valley communities.
The short answer is yes. The mechanism by which that happens is actually closer to what President Dolan was suggesting, is instead of doing it over the course of a week, expanding it, doing over a longer period of time. And that is through our preseason flood coordination meetings that are held statewide. And they typically start at the end of August and proceed through the beginning of November, just because of logistics.
There is that. Can't put them all in the post office at the same time. All right, got a thumbs up here from the executive officer. Our website's outdated, in my opinion. I don't think I'm the only one that has that opinion, but we will put this on it, not wait for an update. Member Grego, do you have a comment? No? She knows about flood. She gets these. She raises the awareness of folks very well in her area. Okay. I've already asked for people to make comment.
I have a nitpick.
I didn't hear that.
I received this,
Oh, Member Countryman.
I received
that
this
mean?
letter in my box, and I think one thing that's a little misleading is the 25% chance of, what is it, in the next 30 years, 25% chance. That's if the flood protection is a 1% flood. And if you got more than a 1% flood protection, that's not true. So I believe that Natomas is going to be significantly more than 1% when it's finished. But anyway.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue. And I have folks saying, well, we only have a bad storm every 200 years because we talk about a 200-year flood. It's we have flood language and then we have people language. It's a continuing problem. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, Member Grego.
Now you forced me into talking about this issue. And I just want to say, based on my experience, that it's not just water coming up on the levees that we have to be concerned about. It's about a lack of internal drainage. I've seen it where Caltrans, their pumps aren't working. It backed up the drainage ditches. The ditches came up on the driveways of the houses. I mean, that's the insurance you use when the water comes from outside, not from inside. And so I think that we have to be aware that those conditions can occur even without severe storms happening. And so you would depend on your flood insurance in order to, keep you whole. My other concern is the cost. The cost, as you said, is going up. Private policies are getting more attractive versus the NFIP program, which doesn't make sense to me. But I guess we'll hear more about that later. Just wanted to voice that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to know that our flyer does, where it spells out the specific levy that protects them. Right after, I can't recall the exact words, but it says something about this is the levy that yours, but there's also a risk of, small creeks and storm drain systems that could cause flooding at your local property. So it's in there. It does kind of get glossed over because you can't be very specific to tell each property owner, but that is covered to try to help warn people of that. Because that's probably a lot more common and gonna affect more people. Thank you.
We have a very caring board with excellent ideas. So what we want to do is be helpful.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else? We'll conclude that item. The next items before the board, 9C, 10A, 10B, 10C are all related to the 2022 Central Valley Flood Protection Plan update. Some are information, some are discussion with board giving direction, and there is a specific request for action. All include the ability for people to provide input to us. That's what we're doing today. So we're going to take a break. I'm going to allow the staff that is associated with each of these items to figure out how it's going to roll out. So we will take a 10-minute break. And I have a watch, so I think I'll do it right this time.
He wasn't looking. Go ahead.
Is it on? Okay. I see I have to stand. Thank you.
Careful.
You know, this happened, these chairs just moved. So they're saving me from an awkward moment. Thank you very much. The board now will reconvene. I see we have the mistress of ceremonies. So excellent. We're going to be, I'm going to call them by their number. You tell me if that's the way we're going to do it. Item 9C is a presentation providing information of the revisions that have been made to the plan since the first release and the October release. Is that correct? Okay. Ruth Darling will orchestrate these presentations. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, President Dolan. Ruth Darling with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. And yes, as President Dolan indicated, Mary Jimenez with the statewide multi-benefit initiatives branch of DWR and the lead for the flood plan for DWR will provide a presentation on where we're at today with the plan, highlighting the public review process, the commenting process, as well as high-level changes that have been made to the plan based on comments received. And then item 10A, I will receive any comments from the board and the public on the plan itself and its associated documents. So, and then item 10B, we will go into hearing feedback from the board as well as the public on the board's draft resolution. And then item 10C will be an action item on the board adoption package for posting on November 4th. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mary.
Good morning, Mary Jimenez.
Thank you.
It's always good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. President Dolan, members of the board, Mary Jimenez with the Department of Water Resources. Thank you very much for having me in person this morning. I was realizing it's the first time I've been in person in front of the whole board in a long time. And it's really a pleasure to see you. Thank you. Here to provide you the update, as Ruth mentioned, on our 2022 flood plan. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as we began this effort a few years ago now, we began with the end in mind. And that was updating the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan to prioritize the state's investment in flood management over the next 3 decades as a system-wide plan for our Central Valley. That investment needs now stands at $25 to $30 billion over the next 30 years as a shared responsibility between local, state, and federal governments. This update also continues to effectively promote multi-benefit projects and ways to integrate and improve ecosystem functions associated with flood projects as an integral part of our plan. Next slide, please. This 2022 update is the second update to the 2012 Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, the first flood plan for the Central Valley, that was adopted by this board in June of 2012. Updating this flood plan in calendar year 2022 specifically fulfills the requirements of the Central Valley Flood Protection Act of 2008 for this 5-year update. The most recent version of the 2022 flood plan was released on October 14th, 2022, and was posted to the websites of DWR and your board. Next slide, please.
It was also sent to a very large email list
Yes, thank you.
that you could log on. The plan itself does that, but here it is, go log.
Yes, thank you, President Dolan. We did have a broad email blast out there to the public as well, notifying them of this release. So this 2022 update, as mentioned, is building upon the work of the past. Even though it was a light update compared to the tremendous effort that was accomplished in 2017, it is informed by a wealth of new information. We assessed progress and effectiveness of flood management related investments from the previous planning cycle, focused on the last 5 years. All of this was to identify our updated investment needs and recommendations for continued implementation of this flood plan over the next 30 years. The state system-wide investment approach that is foundational to the CVFPB and has been so since 2012 is adapting with each update, and particularly with this planning process as complex variables are better understood, such as all the information we're learning about climate change, what we're learning from performance tracking of planned investments, and changes in flood management related policies that are happening all the time. Next slide, please. You'll see on the slide here a summary of our communication and engagement activities accomplished over the last several years. It was a robust effort, jam-packed into only about 3 years. As folks are aware, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020, we had to conduct many of these engagements virtually, and in more recent months have been transitioning to more in-person like we have today and hybrid. So we made the most of our engagement opportunities over the last several years, and they were very informative and really helped us deliver the best 2022 update to the flood plan that we could provide. A key part of this communication and engagement effort that I wanted to point out is actually the biggest bubble in the middle, and that is the regional flood management planning efforts. Those 6 regional flood management planning efforts were absolutely critical to not only continuing the dialogue on complex issues that are encompassed in this flood plan, but also direct content that plugs in related to investments, priorities, and policies. So the value of the regional flood management planning efforts to this particular update, I cannot emphasize that enough, and I wanted to make sure to acknowledge that today. Next slide,
Pause
please.
on that. We all want to say that those were inaugurated with the after the 2012 plan was adopted, and they've been critical communication, critical information, critical in advancing what needs to be done and how it can be done. So we'll get to this, but I'm going to just say it before a couple other board members have the floor. This board thinks that it's incredibly valuable and essential that they are part of the ongoing funding from the state budget.
Thank you very much. I'll go on to the next slide. So the most recent phase of engagement was really around the public process for the flood plan that's been led by the Flood Board. Myself and my team were pleased to have participated in the public hearings back in May, the 3 of them noted on the slide, as well as the board's public workshops this summer centered around the key themes and the major comments that we needed to address in order to provide you with a final flood plan that could be proposed for your adoption. Next slide, please. And so the suite of documents that is posted online right now, we're also calling the CVFPB update document package, is another way to describe it. All of those documents were released online on October 14th and announced in the email blast. We also posted completed comment response logs for the public reviews that were conducted. So you'll see the dates of the public reviews on the slide associated with the first 3. I will note that the public reviews for the conservation strategy update, the state plan of flood control descriptive document update, and the flood system status report updates were done first. And we actively used the information from those public reviews to inch the public draft of the flood plan forward and to address as many comments as we could up front. And then that public review for the flood plan itself occurred a little bit later in April through early June. So all of those documents are available online. We have also completed an addendum to the 2012 Program Environmental Impact Report for the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, also known as our CEQA addendum. That document was filed with the state clearinghouse in October and is posted online with our other documents as well. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about the comment logs and responses that are posted on the website. So you'll see the tally here for the number of comments and responses that we have on the CVFPB and the suite of documents along with their appendices. So in total, I believe that's something a little more than 450 plus comments and responses. Thank you, President Dolan. We do have separate comment logs for each of those documents. So if you want to just look at one, you can. If you want to print all of them separately, you can.
One of us printed all of them, but show that there. Comments were logged, paid attention to, and analyzed. It was not like received and put in a pile. So we appreciate all of the effort on that. Very helpful, very important.
Thank you. Next slide. And so this is just a little more. I know the board has seen this one in the past, but I thought it was worth sharing again, just the diversity of comments and the diversity of reviewers that we had for the public draft of the main document in particular, represented a wide variety of agency partners and public interests in flood management in the Central Valley. So we did get a very broad review, and I'm grateful for that. Next slide, please. So we addressed all of the public comments received through distinct pathways. The diagram you'll see here on the board, I know that it's been shared by board staff Ruth Darling in her past presentations as well. Although you see it applied to the 22 CVFPB main document, I will say that this general process also applied to the other documents in the board's package. Within all of the comments received, many of them resulted in revisions to the draft documents, including the flood plan and the supporting documents. Many of them, or several of them, are also helping to inform actions toward future flood plan updates, including the next one in 2027. Some of them are further being shared with our other state processes, such as our California Water Plan team in DWR, that can dig into some of those as they pertain to broader water management. And I understand it will be more discussed today, but the comments received are also informing the work on the board's resolution. Next slide, please. And so this is just a high-level summary of some of the key revisions we made between the public draft and the versions of the documents that are shared online right now. There's a lot more underneath that. We did correct a number of inaccuracies and editorial problems and things like that that our reviewers pointed out. But the big pieces are we've now included a call to action at the front of the document. But while it is included in the main document, it is meant to be removable so that the board and our other partners can use that as a communications piece as you're going out and engaging yourself on flood management related topics. We've also significantly enhanced the descriptions of climate change included in the document as one of our major themes. That's both in the text and in many of our figures and supporting tables. So we did quite a lot of work on climate change in response to comments. We revised policy issue text in a number of places as well. This is just a really general bullet here, but we addressed things such as substantial comments related to agricultural sustainability, related to funding, also related to climate change with respect to policy issues, and all of those related things in multiple places in the text as well. We also updated the historical funding details to represent the latest numbers associated with the investment strategy effort that's feeding in. And lastly, we did add one new target species as a result of public comment, and that was the monarch butterfly that was added to both the conservation strategy and the flood plan, in addition to the other target species that are already covered. Next slide, please. And so just a summary of the next steps. So we have a tight schedule ahead of us, but we're ready to move. Inclusion of the forward towards the front of the document will need to occur over the next few days. And I wanted to let everyone know that the forward this time will be a joint forward between Board President Dolan and DWR Director Nemeth. So I'm really excited.
7 layers of executive review and 11 track changes on that. But it went from 4 pages to 1.5. So the director and the president had the final say.
They did. And brevity is the soul of wit. 1.5 pages. Thank you, President Dolan. Yes, we're looking forward to including the forward and the board's resolution as Appendix A once that is completed as well. We also had, I wanted to acknowledge we have a bit more document cleanup to do in the next few days. We do have some remaining typos, clarifications, and formatting things that we noticed after we posted it. Wanted to let you know the team is on that. We intend to fix those things before it's posted again on the 4th. And then today, we stand ready for additional dialogue that'll be led by Ruth Darling in subsequent portion of your agenda around any additional revisions that the board would like us to make and making sure that we can turn that around for you next week. So with that, we are also going to be working with board staff Ruth Darling to post a complete updated package of documents to the websites again on November 4th. We're going to be replacing the versions of the documents that are up there now. So if folks are looking and saying, hey, is there going to be a new link? At this point, we're not expecting new links, just a replacing of the links that are there currently for the most updated versions. And again, those will be available on both the DWR and Flood Board websites. And we'll have email blasts and everything else letting folks know of their availability. And that should meet the 2-week requirement for our proposal for adoption at your next business meeting in November. So that is.
I would just ask that you take away should be. We'll meet.
We'll meet. Thank you. We'll meet the requirements.
Yeah, it took a long time to get here and a lot of our observations, and then all of a sudden it was upon us, which is what happens. Yeah, thank you. I'll be quiet now. Maybe.
Thank you. Okay, and next slide. So with that's all I have this morning. I'll pause for any questions or comments from the board or anyone before handing off to Ruth for her item.
Board members. Member Johnson.
Thank you. If I may, just a very brief comment and clarification. And I know the next item is where we will be taking additional comment, right, and talking about possible changes. I just want to thank you again for your work and the whole team and the way that you all have gone about doing this with our constituents and the whole community. I think is just a really good example of how the state ought to work with its constituents and think ahead. If I had to summarize all of the plan, I would say, and where we're at today, it would just be, we have a really good plan now and we need to implement it. And to that end, I believe I noticed one of the revisions in response to comments was a question about how the state and the rest of us will keep track of the various work streams that we said as part of the plan that we would be continuing or embarking on, and that you sharpened that up. And I wonder if you can comment a bit on what that is, because I think it's where we'll be soon, looking forward to the implementation of the plan.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, we did sharpen up and expand the content a bit on the need to continue what we're calling the performance tracking effort and the need to continue to collaborate closely together to do so. Because implementation is a joint responsibility between multiple entities, and we all need to be regularly sharing information as well as working together to drive progress. So continuing that what we're calling the performance tracking effort on planned investments, what else we need to accomplish over the next 5 years, will need to continue to be a part of the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks, a very good addition.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. It's important to say what needs to be done. It is equally important to get it done. Board member. Mr. Countryman.
The one slide that I think is so impressive to me and indicative of how well this plan was carried out and put forward was the one showing all those contacts, all those meetings, all those presentations.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible. I don't think any project has ever met with the public in so many times and in such a way that the people could make changes or suggest changes to a project study to make it better. So I feel that you did a really outstanding job in public outreach.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Countryman. I'm just going to say it needs to be a we. We did that together. And as Board Member Johnson said, that's truly an example. I'm sure we'll hear from other agencies that say they do as well. But we're very proud of the energy that we all put into public outreach and coordination and providing those forums for that interchange to positively occur. Board members? Member Bosler?
Thank you. And just want to echo what Brian said. Just thank you so much for all of your work on this. It's a little daunting coming to my first board meeting and adopting something that we only do once every 5 years. One of the things that I think will be a challenge, I think it's a really wonderful framework, is not just putting it on the shelf, but actually coming back to it every month we meet and understanding how what's before us is directly linked to what's in this plan, and then continuing to push forward to do more and get more done. I definitely have some comments about the call to action, or the executive, I would call that sort of an executive summary. What's the elevator pitch to somebody that doesn't have a lot of time to spend on understanding what we do here? I definitely think we need to bring in some of the dollars in there, because I think that's just a really important component to get this stuff done. We do need money. So that's my comment.
I don't see anybody that put a little tiny hand up or nodding at me, just looking at me to do this. Do we have any comments from those of you who are with us in the room? Mr. Reinhardt. Good morning.
Good morning, President Dolan, members of the board. Rick Reinhardt with MBK Engineers, engineer for the California Central Valley Flood Control Association. I want to commend the department and the board for how much progress we've made since 2012. And even just since 2017. When I stood before you in 2017, we talked about how we were advancing system improvements in the Sacramento system, particularly the Yola bypass, and how we were moving towards alignment, but not quite there. But we had no vision for the San Joaquin Valley at that time. And how far we've come with the San Joaquin Valley in the last 5 years is remarkable. And equally remarkable is the work that the Yola Bypass Partnership has done to create alignment on how we achieve all of our goals for the Yola Bypass: flood protection, ecosystem restoration, agricultural sustainability. There's a lot to be proud of in the 2022 plan. So I just want to acknowledge that. But I also want to highlight where we need to do a better job. And that's largely around implementation. And that's something that this board has talked about, that you've heard from your partners. I think there's around 13 urban hydraulic basins in the Central Valley that are working towards ULDC finding. All these communities started shortly after passage of Prop 1E in 2006. And standing here today, there's 2 urban areas that have made ULDC findings. There's 2 that have FEMA certification. There are no small communities that meet FEMA requirements. And we have an enormous list of repairs that are needed in the rural areas. We are not being successful on the implementation side. And we'll talk about this more with your resolution a little later. I really appreciate that Board Member Johnson, Ramirez, and staff have highlighted this appropriation discussion in that resolution. But what I want to point out is that if we have $30 billion worth of improvements, at $1.5 billion a year, it's still going to take us 20 years, and we are nowhere near $1.5 billion a year of local, state, and federal investment. We have to do a better job of raising awareness within the administration and within the legislature and Congress of the need to get ahead of climate change. In the absence of action, the $3.2 billion in average annual damages that are in the state plan of flood control area are going to become a reality. That it has been a miracle that we have dodged our Hurricane Katrina or Sandy or Harvey. And as the update clearly identifies, things are getting worse. Things have already gotten worse with climate change, and they're going to get far worse. And so we must pick up our pace of implementation. The last point I'd make is implementation isn't just appropriation. It's all of the agencies involved in permitting and providing approvals for these projects moving forward. We are not moving with purpose. We are not getting these projects through the permitting and approval process fast enough, and we can do a better job of that. So thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today.
Another reason I'm happy our meetings are recorded. Thank you for those comments. Understood, appreciated. Is there anyone else in the room? Megan Nagy, good morning.
Good morning, President Dolan, members of the board. I'm Megan Nagy, and for this, you'll see me with multiple hats. For this, I'm going to speak on behalf of Mid and Upper Sac Regional Flood Management Plan. I want to thank Mary and their team for the way they engaged the region throughout the development of the plan. We were their regular members of participating in our regional meetings, and we had regular meetings in the update. So we appreciate that. There are 3 comments that I want to highlight today that we provided on the plan, and some were addressed, but I think we need to do more. And so the first is related to maintenance areas. The Mid and Upper Sac has been very clear that significant portions of our rural system, they're maintained by the state as maintenance areas. And they've not historically undertaken system improvements, large-scale projects. So to ensure equity in the investment strategy, we need to develop policies that have the states be able to implement multi-year capital improvement projects. We need a way that they can plan and construct these sorts of projects. And the state's shown through Lower Elkhorn, they can successfully execute some big projects. We thank DWR for adding the following sentence. It says, further discussion is needed between state and local partners on logistics, authority, responsibility, and alignment of legal framework of capital improvements to facilities maintained by the state pursuant to the Water Code. So now we need to take action on that statement. And a year ago, the board had agreed to develop a subcommittee to look at this exact issue. And we haven't moved forward on that. So what I ask you today is that we look at that commitment and we move forward with that subcommittee on how we can proceed to work together towards an equitable solution on maintenance areas. Next is multi-benefit projects. We've asked that the approach to multi-benefit should shift from focusing on single purpose should shift from individual multi-purpose projects to incentivizing multi-purpose programs. So suites of projects of different types. So within identified multi-benefit programs, individual single-purpose projects get penalized. And so DWR, when we comment on this, responded that the investment strategy in the plan is a programmatic. It is meant to look at all of that. But what we're noticing is we don't implement it that way. All of our programs require everything to be multi-purpose, and it won't allow us to look at the individual projects that are going on in concert with one another. And so maybe this isn't a comment for the plan anymore. Maybe this is a resolution comment that I haven't quite crafted, and I will try to do so in the next 10 minutes. But we have to develop a strategy for developing regional multi-benefit plans that once developed could be used to leverage funding for single-purpose projects. We had a call with River Partners earlier this week, and they have great projects in our region that we are supportive of, but we're scared to death that they're going to take all of the multi-purpose, all of the environmental projects, so we can't do our single-purpose, what'll appear to be a single-purpose project in like the city of Colusa. We don't want to work like that. We want to work together so we can leverage each other's grants and opportunities and expertise so we can work together on making regional multi-benefit programs. So lastly is equity. We had highlighted that the SSIA was developed without consideration of equity and flood risk reduction. And we had recommended that it be reevaluated on how to address equity for rural areas. DWR did edit the CVFPB to support the advancement of equity across the flood systems for refinements in future updates to the CVFPB. So they didn't do it for this one, but they said for future updates so that the most vulnerable communities are addressed in program level priorities. But we need to work through this issue now. So we can't really wait for how we're going to do this. Much of the plan's implementation falls on locals, but a lot of the small rural and disadvantaged communities don't have the ability, they don't have the capability nor the capacity to do this on their own. So we asked the state to ease some of the funding challenges. And while DWR had agreed that there's challenges, the solutions weren't really solutions. So we need to work together. And again, maybe this is a resolution comment. Maybe I need to, again, go back and craft something for the resolution portion. But we've got to figure out, it's not just a cash flow issue. It's like, they don't, how do we help the locals put together their grant applications, execute them, cash flow them? How do we do it so we're actually executing the CVFPB? Thank you very much.
Kind of blending with the other items, but that's all right. Anyone else here in the room to offer his comments? Thank you for that. I say, underline that, but it's good. Okay, anyone online have their hand up? No one? For now? Okay, thank you for the comments, which we will take seriously. Ms. Darling, what's up next?
Item 10A, if staff could pull up that PowerPoint. Thank you. Okay, Ruth Darling with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. And this item will be board staff to facilitate a discussion among the board, first and foremost regarding final revisions to the 2022 update, as well as its associated documents, and then open it up to the public for any comments on the version of the plan that was posted on October 14th. Next slide, please. So with that, I will open it up to President Dolan to facilitate a discussion on any final revisions. As we heard earlier from Mary, the final document needs to be posted on November 4th to meet statute requirements for 2 weeks prior to adoption. So we really have these final days to do any recommended changes to the plan before it's posted on November 4th, a week from today.
I think we better be aware. We're a good board. We pay attention. This is the meeting that we provide direction of any revisions that we wish to be incorporated into the plan. We're not at the resolution yet. So let me just start. I'm right, left channel. We'll start from my right and go to my left. Member Ramirez. Any direction?
No.
Plan. Member Johnson? You want me to come back to you?
Changes needed.
Right.
I have some adjustments.
Right.
I'm wary of the hot mic moment.
We're adjusting mics again. Okay.
I
can
was
hear
starting to
you.
repeat myself anyway. I did not come in asking for changes to the plan, so.
Okay. Member Bosler.
No, I don't have any substantive adjustments to the plan either. I think it's really, though, in how we're communicating it, because it is about making sure people understand it and understand the importance of it. So I think that executive summary, that call to action could be further refined, but not the body of the plan.
We could do our own. Start Dan, Member Gregor. James, look for plan revisions. Gregor. Okay, she says no. Thank you. Hunterman?
Nope.
Right. The only one that I might suggest is just a tweak on that language about equity. It was put in and it's very important, and I know we all understand that. because we all live near or perhaps in small communities, but we've heard that through the RFMPs. If we could say something that we're not going to be updating it for the next 5 years, but working on and updating, that would be we might. But I am agreeing with other comments here that so much of this is related on and a burden on all of us to put the effort on implementation rather than wordsmithing. Okay. Already asked for the public. So this is the board.
President Dolan, I might suggest that we just confirm, since we had 2 agenda items that might have looked to be bold.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay.
There's nobody.
We had staff there.
I don't think you can hear.
Suggest asking again.
We're having trouble listening to you. Is it your mic? I just got a little tick here that the court reporter is not hearing everything.
I
Sorry.
apologize.
I'm sorry, Member
President
Johnson.
Dolan, and also folks in the audience and online. I was asking for a point of clarification about the agenda because we had two items back to back that read similarly. 9C was presenting, but I took it into some comments and some folks did. And this item is, for all of the last comments from us and members of the public about the plan, and as an action item. And so I was just suggesting that even though it seems likely that folks who wanted to comment did on the last item, that we pause here to confirm that we've got everything that folks would want to have.
I appreciate you pointing that out. So I will. The first one was, did you have any comments on the revisions between first posting and the October posting? This one is where you heard from board members about our view of the plan. Is there anyone in the audience that has a suggestion or wishes to make a comment that you would call asking for a revision to this update? First here in the room. No one's standing, no one's raising a hand. Online, anyone with hands up? Yes?
Michael said.
Michael Bissett? Can we find his name online and have him be live? Mr.
Yes,
Bissett?
can you hear me, President Dolan?
We can. Good morning.
Good morning to you and good morning, members of the board. It's a pleasure to speak to you all today. And I wanted to say congratulations to board staff and DWR staff for all their efforts to get us to the point where we're at today. It's been a Herculean effort. Also want to thank the board and the staff for putting out that public outreach plan and the implementation of the public outreach. I thought that was fantastic. All the meetings that took place were well received by members of my board and in the area that I serve. Just a couple of points, and some of my colleagues already raised these, but I just wanted to highlight one of the things I wanted to point out was on trying to implement a program or a system-wide approach to multi-benefit projects. I know, we look to do a lot of levee repairs, and sometimes you can't incorporate a multi-benefit project into a in-place levee repair. And I think if we look at it from a system-wide or a program-wide perspective, I think a lot of projects will get done, and we won't be hamstrung to that linkage. And a lot of funding sources have that multi-benefit linkage in them now. So that's something I'd like to raise awareness to. Also, the funding increases that are specified in the plan are critical to implementing these needed flood risk reduction projects here in the Central Valley. And hopefully we can all work together to push those through the legislature to get funding increases for these important projects. And then lastly, going to Rick Reinhardt's point of implementation, I think a lot of time and effort is spent going through the implementation process specifically for 408 approval and regulatory agency and permitting approvals. And those efforts can sometimes and oftentimes get bogged down And mitigation costs can be very costly and can really impact the ability to deliver an important flood risk reduction project. So those are my comments today. I just wanted to raise those and congratulate everybody for bringing the plan to where it's at today. So thank you.
Thank you for your input. But we congratulate and thank all of the folks who participated and stepped up and kept with us through the last 3 years as well. So thank you to you. Any other online participants with a hand up? I'm told no. Last call, board. Member Bosler.
I wanted to amend my comments to be more specific because if you go to the resolution, it's the double E, double F, and double G that has the information that I think should be in the call to action. So that's just specifically where we outline the operation and maintenance needs for the next 5 years, or actually for longer than that, the deferred maintenance, and then finally the investment, the overall investments needed. So that's just more specific.
So your request is moving that language from,
or some version of that.
something like that. Yes, some parts of the resolution are a little wordy, but that's the way we at work. Yeah, okay, got that. Got it. You got that, Ruth?
So because this is an action item, in my mind, that would be the board directs DWR to make those changes to the call for action, for example. Correct? I'm looking at Jeet. Okay.
Via motion.
President Dolan?
Go.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Member Johnson, we're trying to determine if we just say this is a direction or do we need a motion?
I'm happy to make the motion.
Okay, go. Thank you, Mr.
Just
Doolittle.
just want to clarify that these are for changes to the plan, and I'm hearing comments that seem to speak to the call to the action and want to make sure that it's not conflated with the resolution that's going to be discussed later.
Right, the resolution has not been presented yet. The call to action is in the beginning section of the plan.
And it is part of the plan.
It is also part of the plan, yes. So any changes to the call to action would be addressed now.
Correct. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear for the record. Thanks so much.
Member Johnson, you want to frame the motion?
Yes, if you're entertaining a motion, I heard comments that I think the board would support that are consistent with the plan and from the public that I would say do not require us to amend the plan. And also suggestion from Board Member Bosler that relates to the call to action, which is part of the plan. And so I move that we move forward with the plan substantially as written, subject to some cleanup edits and things the DWR staff is working, and a call to action revised, consistent with Board Member Bosler's suggestion here today. I mean, is that precise enough for you, G, and direct staff can make the edits rather than line item the edit today?
Yes, thank you.
All right, that's the motion. I'm not going to restate it because it's been recorded. Ms. Darling takes good notes. I know that. Is there a second to the motion? Ramirez? Okay. Y'all want to talk about it? Anyone want to talk about it in the audience? In the room? Online? Please call the roll.
Board Member Ramirez.
Aye.
Board Member Grego.
Yes.
Board Member Countryman.
Yes.
Board Member Bosler.
Yes.
Secretary Johnson.
Aye.
Vice President Valines.
Aye.
President Dolan.
Yes. Bosler amendment. Good for you. You remember Dolan had a Dolan amendment in 2012, just trying to get better. Good job. All right, Ms. Darling.
Okay, moving on. Again, Ruth Darling with the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. This is agenda item 10B. Next slide, please. Next slide. So for this agenda item, the board will receive feedback from first the board members on the resolution, the draft resolution of adoption 2022-29, in addition to members of the public, interested parties, folks that are here today, as well as online. And the board's resolution of adoption will also be posted on November 4th, and it will be included as Appendix A in the 2022 CVFPB update. And with that, I will turn it over to President Dolan to entertain discussion on. I will stay here and take notes on the draft resolution.
Well, 2 board members worked with you on this. Those board members, Johnson and Ramirez. So it would be awkward for me to say, what do you two think? So you two have figured out how you want to present this, I hope. You're nodding. So you turn your mics on and look at each other and
Should I start?
tell the board what you're thinking and what you've done.
Sure. I'll start, and Board Member Ramirez will help me out. So you have the draft resolution in your packets, and it does several things. It includes all of the whereases and resolve that any resolution to adopt the plan would have. It has a placeholder, I believe, still for the CEQA findings, which will come in between now and the draft that's published by the 4th and in your agenda packet for next month. And then we use the resolution also to call out and put a spotlight on key conclusions and action statements from the plan itself, and direct staff to pursue those with DWR and our partners, and also to direct staff and set direction for things that we believe are necessary for our agency to do to carry forward with plan implementation. I'll mention a few of them, but you have it in your packet, so I'm not going to go through all of it. But calling out the emphasis on equity, on working well with tribal nations, on integration with other state plans, and particularly in the face of accelerating climate change. We also tried to be very clear about need for implementation across the board, from O&M through capital improvements, through future steps, and to state very clearly our sense of financial resources required for plan implementation, and pulled from the plan a series of numbers that Board Member Bosler was referring to in the last part of the discussion. And those are all directly, numbers that are there in the plan, but we're highlighting those so that we can direct staff to pursue our own channels and work with partners to see it funded. Continuing emphasis on tracking and reporting back. And then a few things related to the board's mission, specifically to help with plan implementation, that we've talked about many times before, revising board regulations to revisit to accelerate permitting and program adoption and implementation, recognizing that all encroachment permits are not for the same purpose. A system for adding or removing facilities from the state plan of flood control, and having an aggressive and adequate compliance and enforcement program to deal with encroachments on in the system are the ones that I would highlight. And then, as we discussed last time, some next steps on climate change, including decision framework. And that's where one of the things that I would ask Tim, to Board Member Ramirez, to elaborate on how our thinking evolved over the course of the past month on that and where we recommend we'd be headed. Anything else that you would like to add? Great, thank you. Before I do that, I just wanted to acknowledge all the hard work that has gone into this by a lot of people. Thank you for that. And I think in summary, to echo what Brian had said, and we've heard Secretary Crowfoot say this, a lot of us have said in different places, it's pace and scale, right? We heard that already this morning. We have a lot more information now that suggests that we know what to do and we have a better sense of how much it costs, and we're not doing it quickly enough to protect the investments that have been made and also to restore the ecosystems that are sort of dependent on the Central Valley rivers. So as far as the standards and climate, we did have, that's probably the topic that garnered the most discussion in the last several months. And we tried our best to not resolve that in the resolution, but to focus and to tee it up in a way that we could move it forward and talk about it and listen to people that are dealing with it now. There are folks on the ground that are using the information that's being generated as part of their design process. But there's just not a real sense of where that line's drawn yet, and that's because it's hard to know where the line is, and the line might continue to move. And that's okay. It's going to keep, that's not going to change. I think the uncertainty is always going to be there, but the uncertainty is getting narrowed, and I think we can help people help each other, listen to each other, and to find a way for the board to make sure that's done consistently and satisfactorily so that we do take those things into consideration. So we don't pretend to have all the answers, and the resolution, our intent was not to provide an answer. It was really to highlight the issue so that we could carve out time and space and to keep going. And as other folks have said up here already, and we'll talk more about this, I think, next month, we want to use the resolution as a way to mark a point in time and to think about what we're going to do this time to prepare not just the new plan in 2022, but what we're going to do to implement projects on the ground starting now and between now and then. It's really important to acknowledge the breadth of the work, but also to roll up our sleeves and to think about how it can be done differently. And I really liked the comments that Megan made about the projects because as much as we've talked about multi-benefit projects, if you were to ask the people that are the sponsors of those, there's not a program that funds those projects. There's 18 programs that fund that one project. So we need to think about how we're doing this work. We're making it really hard for the people that want to do things to get those things done. We're flagging the need, but maybe we need to think about how we realign the way that we deliver some of those programs from the state side and the federal side. The federal side is not in our control, famously, unless we have a little carve out for California, which is also very challenging. But we have more flexibility here about how we can make those things happen. And I would welcome an opportunity to talk about that with some of the key folks that are involved in those programs. I think that's really important. If we have it continue to be the way that it's been working on the ground and people have to struggle to align state programs for investment, then we're not doing a very good job on the state side if we can't provide a better way to help people. And not just for multi-benefit projects, but for all the projects that need to be done in the Valley. And if you take a step back and think about the scale, it's really easy to line things up and think about ways to capture all the benefits and then fund them, rather than continue to look at it the way that we've always looked at it in these little lines that are drawn in segments and sections. And there's a lot of that happening, and I don't want to discount that work. People have done their best to figure out how to make the system work that we have now, and that's also super important. Otherwise, nothing would be happening. That work would just be stalled. But hopefully we can find a way to incrementally make it easier and better to increase our pace and scale. So this is really a start. I'm really grateful for the people that came in person. It's nice to see people. And I think what Brian and Ruth and I did, and I really wanted to thank Ruth for all of her work to try to corral Secretary Johnson and myself. We wanted to have a discussion about this, and not just today, but we're happy to work offline and bring things back in November so that we can really put a fine point on it and then all look at the resolution and know what we need to do and then to keep doing it and to start maybe doing some new things.
Thank you. Shall I ask for board input now, gentlemen?
At your discretion, President Dolan, I think that'd be an excellent idea.
I'll just go same way. Don't know if you're ready. Member Bosler, do you have any comments on the resolution?
I just want to associate my comments with the excellent comments of Mr. Ramirez. And I noticed number 50 on the resolution speaks to just DWR, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and interested parties, but I think it's far more departments in our state family that have funding and have projects that can contribute in a positive way to what we have responsibility for. And so I think it's important to look at the entire state family, especially, and of course, interested parties is a lot of other folks. But I found it interesting to just call out DWR and U.S. Army Corps and not some of the other departments like Department of Conservation that's doing a lot in ag-led conservation, and then the Resources Agency that's doing a lot of these multi-benefit type funding streams as well. So just thinking more holistically about different funding streams that have been allocated by the legislature and how they can fit into our program.
That would be number 50 of the section that starts with, now therefore be it resolved. Yeah, that's a good one. And there's federal ones as well. There's a whole new United States Army Corps of Engineers, engineering with nature, moving into regional programming, permitting, all those things. So that could just be a fatter item. Member Grego? Resolution? I just wanted to say for the public, the resolution that's proposed before us, sorry, Member Grego, I'm so wordy today, is 17, almost, well, it's 16 pages. The 17th is signature. It's 123 entries. And it labels them by the alphabet and goes through the alphabet 2 full and a 2/3 time. So we are nothing if not aspirational and thorough. Member Grego.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank board members Ramirez and Johnson for their work on the resolution. And I want to thank you for, hearing me when I talk about evacuation planning, because it's evident to me, and I think it's been said today, is that there's not enough money and we haven't been keeping track as far as expenditures of infrastructure. And I know that it's been noted many times when I've said that flood control infrastructure is the most important infrastructure that there could be, because if there's a levee breach, most of that other infrastructure is underwater. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the most important infrastructure especially for the Central Valley. So because I've had experience with levee breaches, I kind of like to take you back to 1986. It was the largest evacuation in California. It was a levee breach. It was a sunny day, actually, and it was in March when that levee broke. It was an under seepage issue. It didn't overtop, but it came up underneath and collapsed that levee. And the amount of money that was spent after that levee failure was huge. The state of California made a lot of residents in Linda millionaires because of the Paterno decision. But not just that. You think about the amount of work, the earth movers that came in, the material that was brought in, the labor that went on 24 hours a day. You think about the public safety point of how you house these people, how you fed these people that were no longer had a home. You think about the amount of money that was invested during that flood alone. And then we think about why we're not appropriating enough money for this infrastructure. To me, when I read this resolution, I got anxious, because when you've been through this, you understand how important it is. So I think that when we look at funding or we look at other ways to, get rid of those barriers, I think it's really important that we do this every day. You know, just not once a month when we come to the dais, but every single day we should be looking at this. And I really love the dialogue that our board is, and I appreciate our new board member because it's keen to me that she has a real grasp on the funding part. And that's always the catch right there, is that we have the ideas, we know how to break down barriers, but how do we fund this? You know, between the federal and the state and locals, we have to be more creative. And I know that I bend Rick Reinhardt's ear a lot when I'm saying, but we have to build capacity for more water in the system, la, 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 you know, and he calms me down because, you know, I'm just so anxious about this whole thing. So I want to thank all that were involved in this, and through the plan, thank you for the department and the board, and especially the managers and the public. You know, their input was really important. So I'll end right there.
Thank you for, I'm not thanking you for the experience you went through in 1986 because it was horrific, but reminding us that if we do not improve, do not repair, we spend more and more people are in danger.
Maybe now, maybe later.
Yeah, save lives. Be that. Member Countryman? Got any comments on the resolution? Is it long enough? Vice President Blinds?
Just thank you to you guys for your work.
I have some. I'm going to give them to you. A lot of them are just what it looks like. That's all. And you can take them or not. I'll give this to you. But it just seems to me on the front that the first line should be Central Valley Flood Protection Board. The second line should be the Natural Resources Agency, and the third line, the State of California. It is our resolution, and we are part of the agency, and obviously we're a state entity, but that might just be format. I'm not really sure that the A through Z, the AA through ZZ, and the AAA through SSS really are necessary. You might have just put them there so that we can identify, but I think whereas is, without all of that, without the letters in front, is sufficient, as all our other resolutions have been. On H, I may have missed something, but I think the OMRR&R is our resolution of how we define each of those and want to work forward. I don't think it actually is a state standard. I think the state has a operation and maintenance, and we wanted to, with the resolution, augment how we implement by adding all the Rs, but I could be wrong. And the state did it and I missed it. That's all. No, I some of them I said maybe shorten, and then I crossed it out because you really can't. All the things that we did and the outreach and the input we received from everyone, the forums we had were so important. So in other cases, because I do typos, I highlighted your typos so I don't feel like I'm alone when I send emails. But if you don't mind, I'll just give it to you. The rest of them are really just kind of what it looks like, not policies, not big stuff.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Oh, well, after you see it, you may not say that. And you have to let me know if you have to interpret my writing. Okay, those are board comments. The resolution, first of all, hands up on everyone who read it. Oh, me. We're all raising our hand. Anyone here in the room with us that would like to make a comment on the resolution, suggestion, and whatever? Okay. Good. Thank you for lining up. Good morning. And you are?
I'm Tom Slater, and I'm the chair of the Central Valley Flood Control Association. I'm also chairman of the board for Reclamation District 999, and I'm also a commissioner on the Delta Protection Commission. With that being said, I am here to proudly state that a little bit of my thunder has been stolen by Mr. Ramirez and Ms. Griego, so it's nice to know that my comments are already in your head The collaboration required, we greatly appreciate our relationship as the Flood Control Association with this body, and we don't want to do anything to disrupt that. So the update is a very, very good update. The resolutions, I'll let my engineering friend Rick talk about specifics there, as well as Megan Nagy, our vice chair. But it's important to note that the that the update is an update to an existing plan, and we don't want to forget what that plan was all about. Climate change, 5 years ago, climate change was still bantered about by the naysayers, and we've come a long way, and we all recognize it. And if you live behind a levee like I do, you think about it a lot. Excuse me. So that being said, we're extremely concerned about funding and operation and maintenance money. And the programs that the state has, FMAP, FSRP, and 30 other acronyms that you guys are all familiar with, are extremely important. Subvention program. We can't ignore, we can't set this aside and move climate change to the top, or we can, just don't forget about what was already in the plan. And there's the old saying, you know, you can walk the walk, but you need to talk the talk. That usually has a pretty negative connotation or definition to it that I don't mean to infer here, but we need to get things done instead of just planning them. Again, you need proper planning, design, strategy, all that's very important. But from a guy who's a third generation farmer in that same region, RD 999, the people need to be assured that money's not just spent planning these things. We need to get them done. And some of that small community funding and things like that was discussed. That's incredibly important. If you have a $2 million project which doesn't go far and want us to pay 80% of it, or excuse me, 20%, and the state share is 80, it's almost impossible. But those are things not in this resolution, but thoughts on our mind. So that's a concern. I'm laying out some concerns, how they relate to the whereases in the, I thought all those letters were somebody's initials that edited it. The prioritization of how funding goes out is a major concern. It's always difficult to get the state and DWR to associate, get money out in a prioritization manner. Everybody's project is the most important. And so that's a difficult thing. We appreciate the board's input on that and the board's work with that. Mr. Ramirez indicated how we need to be collaborative, and the California Central Valley Flood Control Association is a 70-member association, 70 agencies within it that operate, maintain, and improve the state plan of flood control. It's a huge organization. It's a well-oiled machine, as they say, with council, lobbyists, executive directors, staff. We hope that you recognize that you always have as someone you can come to and talk to about. I don't think there's another group that knows from Yuba City down through Stockton and below better than the Flood Control Association. So we hope that we can continue that. Getting off a little track with the whereases, but somehow we can incorporate that, and Mr. Reinhardt will be more specific on that. I don't think I have too much more to say, other than, you know, it's always about the money. But we appreciate all your work, and the update was outstanding, and look forward to working with you on it. Thank you.
As we you.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Slater. Mr. Reinhardt.
President Dolan, members of the board, Rick Reinhardt with MBK Engineers, engineer for the Flood Control Association. The association as I stated earlier, appreciates the attention that the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan draws to the deficiencies of the system and our vision for how to improve it. We have reviewed the resolution. We do have some substantive editorial changes we want to propose. We don't think today is the right environment to get into that detail, but I would like to hit them at a high level and then request that we work with either your staff or members of the board on Monday or Tuesday to propose some edits that they can consider, because I understand this needs to be finalized by next Friday. So if I could, I'd like to highlight the areas that we think that we could do a better job on. Probably the most significant comment, and this is item 48 on page 16, where it identifies what the priorities are. And it says the board acknowledges the importance of 10 key policy issues identified in the 2022 Central Valley Flood Protection Plan update and will facilitate resolution of these interrelated policy issues with the understanding the board has identified climate change resiliency and updating design standards for the flood system as the highest priority to address prior to the 2027 update. We think that should be expanded. We think that the pace of implementation to get ahead of climate change, to be responsive to climate change, is a better way to define the first aspect of that. We also reflect on the 2017 resolution that identified improved O&M as a priority, that should be added. And then lastly, on the design standards, we talked about this, I think it was at your September board meeting. Different people will review that and consider it and have a different vision of what that means. In talking to Board Member Johnson, Board Member Ramirez, I understand it's in the context of how to deal with a range of information that's coming out about climate change. We think there's a way to frame this, that we have existing design standards that the state, that DWR has written in the urban levee design criteria, that the Army Corps of Engineers has in their levee design manual. And even in the ULOP process, it identifies how you consider climate change. We think there's some language that we could agree to that frames the issue, that gets you where you want to be, that makes that we're addressing climate change, but also doesn't lead to confusion over what that means. So I need to look at my notes here. We just came off the flood forum last week, and one of the conversations that I had was with John Kane, and he's been, of course, talking with his environmental colleagues that we're not doing a good job of speaking with one voice to raise awareness among decision makers at the state and federal level. One of the things I observed about the resolution is there is a massive amount of information here. It's all great information, but I think different readers could walk away with different conclusions over what are the key takeaways. And so maybe doing some wordsmithing to draw, after reading this volume of information, drawing the reader to what are the really important things in the elevator speech that I think Member Bosler mentioned earlier. What do we want them to say when they think about the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan? What are the 2 or 3 sentences you would give someone on what we want to do between now and 2027? So we would like to offer that opportunity to engage and to get this finalized. We think it's a great plan. We support the resolution and look forward to the opportunity to work with you to finalize it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just say that we do welcome your input, and I'm looking at Ms. Darling, if she would be the contact for that so that she can organize that discussion. She's behind you, so we have to go like that. Okay, she did a thumbs up, so that's your contact.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nagy. Welcome back. And it's still morning.
All right, good morning. So I'm Megan Nagy. I introduced myself as the lead for the Mid and Upper Sac Regional Flood Management Plan. I'm actually Deputy Manager for Reclamation District 108. Sacramento River West Side Levee District, and the Knights Landing Ridge Drainage District, 3 rural reclamation districts in Colusa and Yolo counties. RD 108 leads the Mid-Upper Sac Regional Flood Management Plan. I'm also vice chair of the Central Valley Flood Control Association, as Tom mentioned. So these comments, I think, are all supported by all of those entities as I get through this. It's clear a ton of effort went into putting this resolution together, and thank you for taking that level of effort and thought to put that resolution together. And I'm sure between Ruth and Tim and Brian, you put a ton of effort into that. So I'm going to start by expressing the appreciation of some of the items that we support and are appreciative of. Strongly support the item on intensifying efforts to increase the pace and scale of implementation. You've heard that over and over again. We're obviously supportive of that. We agree that we need to continue to focus on obtaining, but I would also add the word maintaining PL 8499 eligibility with the awareness of the board's statutory authority requirement for unacceptable encroachments. We've done a lot to get folks into that program, so we need to continue to get more folks, but we also need to make sure we maintain that. And thank you for continuing to express your support for continuing the RFMPs, supporting the RFMPs. That's been a huge success.
We will not give that up.
Your support for floodplain agriculture didn't go unnoticed. However, the statement limits the description of agricultural benefits to drainage improvements and wildlife-friendly agriculture. I would say this is a gross understatement of the benefits of floodplain ag. Floodplain agriculture is not just perfectly compatible with land use for flood management. It enables our long-term stewardship by farmers at little or no cost to the flood world. The description also doesn't recognize the larger benefits that floodplain agriculture can promote. And I don't know, through programs like Floodplains Reimagined that our district is leading, which are opportunities to recharge groundwater, transitory storage for water during flood events. There's a lot more that floodplain agriculture can do. It also doesn't recognize that one of the best ways to avoid floodplain development is to invest in our rural levees so agriculture can continue to thrive.
Could you say that again?
Oh, geez. I said it doesn't recognize that one of the best ways to avoid floodplain development is to invest in rural levees so farming remains viable and the land use is not converted to intensely developed lands. That's what my actual talking point said.
Don't need more intensely urban land in danger zones.
Right.
Agriculture is a tremendous benefit for.
And it's really important now as a lot of the farmland is being passed down to the next generation who aren't necessarily as tied as much to the land. We have to, you can see, you see it. It's
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So we have to figure out a way to do all that. Similar to Rick, I spent time going through the 2017 priorities and resolution as I was reviewing this one. And I noticed the same thing that Rick did, that the 2 key issues in that plan were funding and O&M. And it was pretty clear in the resolution that we all agree that we'd like, and frankly, need to continue with the funding and implementation as a high priority. The issue hasn't gone away, and the resolution clearly points that out. Funding needs to remain a priority. Otherwise, frankly, it doesn't matter what else we're in there because we won't have any money to do it. And so, I think that was really highlighted this year when we had a historic budget surplus and flood really didn't get anything. So how do we do a better job? And I think it needs to remain a priority. So in that regard, the goals and policies, I think, need to be crosswalked with an actual implementation strategy, with implementation champions to help identify our top priorities. And we appreciate all the effort that goes into the plan updates, but without strong implementation expectations, we run the risk of just planning and not executing. So I think Rick pointed this out, or maybe Tom, the plan calls for an annual investment of about $1 billion. And that kind of investment level right now is pretty unlikely in the near term, but we have to build up capacity, right? We have to figure out how to keep building so we can eventually get there. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to execute the plan. So, one of the recommendations is form a committee to develop an implementation plan or strategy to meet these goals, and have the committee identify what are the obstacles that are in our way that aren't allowing us to achieve these objectives and these challenges. I'm going to move on to O&M. And I think we did make progress on O&M. That was a goal. The FMAP program was created. That's the, why am I forgetting the acronym? Yes. The Flood Maintenance Assistance Program. My board always yells at me for using too many acronyms. And more LMAs submitted, system-wide improvement frameworks for PL 8499 eligibility. One of my in our levy system, we benefited from over $20 million of federal funds post 2017, 2019 flood because we remained eligible. And with the board's acknowledgement that encroachments are a problem, we have to keep O&M as a priority and focus in more on that effort. If we want to keep continuing the momentum that we've gained, we don't want to lose it. So highly recommend we keep O&M as one of the top priorities. As we look at implementing more conservation actions into the flood system, we also need to recognize the increased cost that has to O&M. And how are we going to address that and allocate additional resources to making sure that that's sustained? And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the climate resiliency. We understand why climate resiliency has to be a priority. But we encourage incentivizing projects that address climate resiliency rather than focusing on a new standard. Maybe the intent isn't there, but it feels like it's just more regulatory requirements that divert attention away from implementation. I mean, as we all know, climate change is here. It's not waiting for us to develop a new standard. We've got to start doing things now. A majority of our system, especially the small communities in rural areas, don't meet current standards. Why would we develop new standards when we can't even meet the ones we have right now? The policy has the potential to be inequitable and frankly unreachable for a large percentage of the system that are already out of compliance, especially in the rural and small communities. And if we keep moving the goalposts, it's going to be harder and harder for those communities to achieve this. I'm not going to repeat, Rick already talked about the rural or small communities in the urban areas that don't meet the current standards. So I think our decisions need to be informed by climate projections, but we can't allow that uncertainty to slow implementation of our projects. And we tend to have this, if we're coming up with a new standard, we tend to be like, oh, slow down. We don't want to make a bad decision or a bad investment. We just get this fear and we don't move forward.
Yeah, good.
So, I'd rather see something that says making investments for flood protection improvement during the next 5 years to ensure the 2027 CVFPB update reflects the best available scientific information, includes climate resilience policy that incentivizes the shared federal, state, local investments in multi-benefit flood system improvements, which anticipate and mitigates climate change. Those are your words. They're already in there. Hold that one out. That should be the focus. How do we incentivize this? As I said, we'll work to provide more detailed comments. We'll work with Rick, make sure your staff has that so it can be incorporated. And honestly, the board's resolutions in the past 2 years, they've been the most impactful piece of the CVFPB in the last 2 rounds. That's what created the RFMPs. That's what created the Small Communities Program. That's focused on O&M. This is a really important piece of the CVFPB, and we want to make sure that we capture the right things. Before I forget, one last note on flood evacuation planning. That's really really important, but I think there's even more to flood emergencies. And we'll provide an expanded statement for the staff to consider, but continued and more investment in emergency planning, exercising, evacuation planning, being able to prepare, that all needs to be a priority. And the state's done a great job investing in that. And how do we keep that momentum going? So with that, thank you very much.
Did you happen to read from prepared remarks?
Did I waver from them?
No, did you read from them?
Some. I'm not great at reading exactly,
Oh, you
improvising.
do very well. I was just wondering if you would give that to Ruth.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm happy to share.
I should have said that first. Yeah, appreciate your comments. Anyone else? Did you want to comment to her? Member Ramirez?
Sure, thank you. Be happy to start. Thanks for those specific comments. Really appreciate them. And I'm looking forward to, I guess, will be a busy few days next week, which is great. I think that's exactly what we were hoping for. We want this kind of feedback, and because we want this kind of support for the resolution in the end. And we definitely want to do what some folks have described, which is this is a point in time and we're capturing it in the plan and in the resolution, but this is also a chance for us to reach out beyond our regular day-to-day audience and deliver that message in the elevator, in the building you happen to be walking through, with the people that don't track flood every day the way that we would like them to. This is a document that allows us to gather our thoughts, put them in one place, and to share that with other people that have a lot to say about how much pace and scale we're going to be able to increase, right? So this is a really great opportunity, and I'm really grateful for the feedback that we have received. I also wanted to just acknowledge that on the standards, at least from my perspective, I appreciate the fact that people might interpret things in a different way when you read the same words. We weren't trying to write another layer of complication or regulatory framework. I think we wanted to find a way to understand how people are wrestling with this issue now, so that we can make sure that we understand that and we do that consistently, so that as we make the investments, we're able to say that we are taking these things into consideration. We don't want to end up in a situation where all we're doing is relying on the old standards, and that's not what's happening, as best as I've been able to glean from people that are doing this work. And I think we wanted to just make sure we created a forum and a space for that to be shared, so that we could glean insight and then make sure that we all do that in a similar fashion. And then in the end, all these different programs and things that we're doing align, right? The board has varied authorities and the state has varied roles in the valley. The tributaries, as an example, with the designated floodway program, in the end, all these things have to make sense, right? They have to work together. And we tried to highlight that also in the resolution as something that we're mindful of, that we want to make sure that we're doing, so that we don't have any gaps or inconsistencies. As people make these investments, we want to make sure that things are connected and we're thoughtful about it, so that when the dams have to release water and the rivers flow because of precipitation, they don't know who the LMA is or what standard the project was designed to. The water's going to come, and it'll be the state's responsibility writ large, not just the board's, to make sure that we've done our best to prepare for those moments. So just a real great big thank you to everybody who was able to be here today and to share your thoughts. And I know that we will follow up and we'll work with Ruth to do that. You want to jump in, Brian, and anything?
Just echo that. Really thankful for your comments. Was nodding my head and making notes all the way through, and look forward to the edits. From our perspective, I think I'll speak for myself. It's all about increasing the pace and scale of implementation and finding the actionable things that we as board members and the board and our community can be working on to do that. And so many of the things that that I heard, I think are signals of increased need for clarifying the top line message. So I heard a number of places of looking for more emphasis on a point that I absolutely want to add more emphasis to and was trying to in the drafting. And so I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to the next round. We don't have an action item here, President Dolan, but, sense of the board, maybe, nodding of heads to go back and work with folks on these comments, and Board Member Bosler's note about item 50, which I think also might be the place to follow up on my exchange with Mary about tracking implementation, and Migi's point about an implementation tracking group, paraphrasing, and President Dolan's suggestions and the others we heard. Sense of the board, that's a good thing to be doing, and follow up on that. Nod your head if you don't, but otherwise we'll go back and work on those things.
I'm saying yes. I'm saying yes, and I'm looking to ask board members if they think anytime I said give direction, or Tim Ramirez said, I want to work on that, or Brian Johnson said, yes, we want to form a committee and get some input and do it, that you all agree that that all can be done. Yes, 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 yes. We're speaking as a seven-headed person. And Ms. Darling is there, and she's smiling and ready to do it. I just need the two board members who are going to work with you and those who have done that, but it has to be done in time to post it November 4th. So that means earlier than November 4th, like Monday. Is that good? Thank you for what you've done so far and the energy you're going to put to finish it up. So we'll have a, yeah. Oh, we do have a hand up. I asked for a hand up twice, but we just got one. Mr. Scott Shapiro, you're online. You want to talk to us? Or with us?
Thank you. Thank you, President Dolan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Good. I apologize for having to do this virtually. I'm sitting in a parking lot at a gas station along Route 80. I have a 2 o'clock meeting in Tahoe, and this is the only way to participate. The comments that the Flood Control Association made already through Tom Slater, the president, and Megan Agee, the vice president, and Rick Reinhardt, our engineer, really summarize the issues that the association is bringing forward on behalf of our 70+ members. And I just wanted to note that I was particularly appreciative of yours and board members Ramirez and Johnson's reaction to them and commitment to work with us to address these issues. I don't think there's any space between us. I think we have complete alignment about what needs to be done. We need to increase the pace of implementation. We need to advocate for effective funding from federal, state, and local sources. We need to get a handle on what climate change means and how we incorporate those changes into our design standards. We are in complete agreement, and we look forward to working with you to make modest changes to the resolution that captures what we think we were all saying, but maybe with an extra set of eyes we saw slightly differently. So we appreciate the commitment, and we will have our virtual pencils ready on Monday to work with Ruth and whoever else is part of that effort.
Thank you for that. And you want us to feel bad for you that you're in Tahoe?
Well, I wouldn't expect sympathy, but at least understanding.
All right. Well, we're in the lovely community of Sacramento, in a lovely building that's got sound challenges. Are we, any other hands raised? Mr. Bissett's name is up there. Is that because he raised his hand, or it's just left over?
Yeah, that's just
Okay, that's fine. Can you wrap this up for us? Because I'm like full of good stuff.
Okay. That's the end of item 10B. We have our direction. I have my direction for the remainder of today as well as the beginning of next week. And we can move on to item 10C. Thank you. Next slide, please. So item 10C is an action item. So board staff recommends that the board approve the 2022 Central Valley Flood Protection Plan Update Adoption Package and directs staff to publish the adoption package on the board's website 2 weeks prior to recommended adoption, which is November 8, 2022. This is the adoption package. And I do have all of the appendices if you are interested in knowing what those are. And then next slide, please. And this is the request or the recommendation for the action item.
Hang on just a second. The board meeting of adoption of the plan is November
18th.
18th.
And 2 weeks prior to that will be November 4th, a week from today.
Yes. So what is an action that the board does need to take is to adopt the associated documents to be included in the package. And these documents are, of course, the 2022 Central Valley Plan update and the appendices A through D, A as in apple, D as in dog. It's the State Plan of Flood Control descriptive document update. It's the flood system status report update, and its associated appendices A through C, the conservation strategy, A through H, and the supplemental program environmental impact report, along with the resolution, encompasses what would be the plan adoption. So the board would approve that these documents be part of the adoption package.
Right, and direct staff to post on the website.
And direct that it be posted and shared and notified, but definitely posting. Who wants to tackle that motion? Second. All right, moved by member Griego, second by member Bosler. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Comments? You're saying no, not yes. No comments. Okay. Please call the roll. What? Does anyone in the audience want to make a comment on our motion to improve, have these documents be part of the plan? You better not, because it's state law. Anyone online? Okay. I'd ask, please call the roll.
Board Member Ramirez. Aye. Board Member Griego.
Yes.
Board Member Countryman.
Yes.
Board Member Bosler. Secretary Johnson.
Aye.
Vice President Belines. President Dolan.
The ayes have it, along with the yeses. Action is adopted, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to take a break for lunch. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, President Dolan, Vice President Belines, and members of the board. My name is Angela Nguyentan, and I'm board environmental staff. I'm here today with Jennifer Callis to present an overview and request for board action for the Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project, the American River Contract 3A project, and the American River East Levee Contract 4 project. These projects are all components of the overall American River Watershed Common Features project. And as you recall, you were provided with informational briefings at the August and September 2022 board meetings. We've consolidated the presentations for these three action items in consideration of the board's time. We will pause our presentation in between each agenda item to allow the board to vote. Next slide, please. Multiple agencies support the project's design and construction efforts. The Army Corps is the federal sponsor for these projects, and the non-federal sponsors are the board and the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, or SAFCA. The Department of Water Resources Flood Projects Branch has been providing project support and funding. Next slide, please. In addition to the project summary and background for these three projects, we will also provide a CEQA update including which significant and unavoidable impacts have been identified, the public comments received, as well as request board action for each project, including certification of the environmental impact reports and adoption of a resolution for each project. Next slide, please. The American River Watershed Common Features Project General Reevaluation Report, or GRR, was jointly prepared by the Army Corps and the board. The document evaluated the potential impacts of the American River Watershed Common Features Project, including seepage and stability improvements along the Sacramento River, erosion improvements along the Sacramento and American Rivers, and widening of the Sacramento Weir and Bypass. The GRR was adopted by the board in 2016 under Board Resolution 2016-04 as a programmatic document with the understanding that additional CEQA analysis would be conducted at the project level for each individual contract. Today, the board will consider certifying the project level CEQA analyses and adopting 3 resolutions prepared for the following contracts: American River Erosion Contract 2, American River Contract 3A, and American River East Levee Contract 4. I will now turn it over to Jennifer Callis, who will be presenting Agenda Item 10D for the Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project. Next slide.
Contract number 2.
Thank you, Angela. My name is Jen Callis, and I am Board Environmental Staff. Today, I will provide you with a project summary and CEQA update for the Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project. The informational briefing for this project was provided at the August 2022 board meeting. Next slide, please. The Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project is located in the city of Sacramento along the left bank of the Sacramento River. Project activities will occur at 6 individual sites located from the Miller Park area to the Pocket Greenhaven neighborhoods. Next slide, please.
That's almost an hour.
The Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project will provide approximately 14,950 feet of bank protection and planting benches. The primary objective is to restore the structural stability of the levee and maintain public safety. The proposed bank protection design was formulated to ensure the future integrity of the levee system between river miles 49 and 58. Vegetation removal for the project is anticipated to start as early as October 2022, and construction is planned to start in June 2023 and conclude in November of 2024. Planting and greening will occur in spring 2025, and monitoring will continue throughout the establishment period, which is typically 3 to 5 years. Next slide, please. The table provided shows the location and type of work to be conducted at each site. Due to the steep slope at Site 1, only bank protection is proposed. The remaining sites include bank protection and planting benches. Next slide, please. Bank protection, riparian benches, and in-stream woody material will be constructed throughout the project area. Bank protection will be designed to prevent bank erosion and provide resistance. The design also includes a launchable rock toe to provide resilience against riverbed scour. The riparian bench will incorporate a low elevation planting bench into the channel to provide overhead cover and near-shore aquatic habitat during the low flow season. Plantings will be installed with a temporary irrigation system to the extent possible to mitigate for lost riparian and shaded riverine aquatic habitat from construction. In-stream woody material, which is a requirement of the GRR NIMF's biological opinion, will be installed to allow for replacement of in-stream cover for special status fish species. The in-stream woody material consists of mature trees with root balls and canopies. Next slide, please. To fully analyze the potential environmental impacts of the Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project, the Army Corps and the board prepared a supplemental EIR-EA. The Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 Supplemental EIR-EA includes a series of avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures to reduce the effects to less than significant. However, there are still significant and unavoidable impacts that cannot be reduced to less than significant with mitigation. Next slide, please. There are a total of 3 resource areas in which potentially significant and unavoidable impacts are expected to occur. Construction of the proposed project will impact approximately 3.5 acres of riparian habitat, resulting in temporary significant and unavoidable impacts on vegetation and wildlife. Long-term impacts are reduced to less than significant with mitigation, which includes avoidance measures and planting the riparian bench with native riparian trees and shrub species. Recreation will have short-term impacts due to temporary closures of the Sacramento River Bike Trail and portions of Miller Regional Park. Construction will also cause temporary recreational boating traffic and closure of the Garcia Bend boat access. While these impacts will be reduced to less than significant in the long term, this impact is considered significant and unavoidable in the short term. Visual resources will experience significant and unavoidable impacts due to the presence of equipment and construction activities. However, because construction is only anticipated to occur for 2 construction seasons, the reduction in visual quality from construction activities will be temporary. In addition, the removal of trees and vegetation at the project site will have significant and unavoidable short-term impacts to visual resources. Next slide, please. The draft supplemental EIR-EA for the Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project was circulated for a 45-day period from April 15th to May 29th, 2022. A virtual public meeting was held on April 26th, 2022. A total of 10 comments were received during the public review period. Comments were received from the Environmental Protection Agency, the State Lands Commission, the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District, the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, the Department of Toxic Substances Control, and individual citizens. In general, the comments received were related to recreation, special status species, fisheries, boat docks, encroachments, and camping. Comments and responses are included in Appendix C of the final environmental document. Next slide, please. Board staff has prepared a statement of findings, a statement of overriding considerations, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, or MMRP, for the project. Next slide, please.
Engage.
Board staff recommends that board adopt Resolution 2022-22 for the Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project. The adoption of the resolution will certify the final supplemental EIR-EA. It will adopt the statement of findings, the statement of overriding considerations, and the MMRP. Will approve the Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project and delegate the authority to the executive officer to execute the notice of determination. Next slide, please. That concludes the overview of the Sacramento River Erosion Contract 2 project. We have Alessia Siglari and Susie Rial called in from DWR's Flood Projects Branch to answer any questions you may have. In addition, board staff would like to pause here and request that the board take action on this item before we resume our presentation.
Thank you. Would you say the name again of the person who's calling in if there's questions?
Alessia Siglari and Susie Rial.
Oh, there were 2. Okay, thank you. Board members have any questions for this? We do remember the excellent informational presentation to get us keyed up for this. I don't see anyone wishing to talk. Enjoy, John. Is there anyone in the room wants to provide information, ask a question, make a comment? I see no one. Do we have any hands up?
No.
It appears no questions. We're ready to go. So you ready for action?
Yes.
The action is requested, which I will not explain again, but it is to adopt Resolution 2022-22. And that has findings and information contained in that resolution. Is there a motion? Member Griegos made the motion. Second? Member Countryman. That's the motion before us. Last call for any discussion. Please call the roll.
Board Member Ramirez. Aye. Board Member Grego. Yes. Board Member Countryman.
Yes.
Board Member Bosler,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson, Vice President Valines, President Dolan.
Aye. Okay, that's 5 ayes and 2 yeses, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we're on to contract number 3A.
Yes, Angela will now continue our presentation with agenda item 10E.
Thank you, Jen. Slide. Okay, again, my name is Angela Winton, and I'm Board Environmental Staff. I will be providing you with this project summary and CEQA update for the American River Contract 3A project. The informational briefing for this item was presented at the September 2022 board meeting. Next slide, please. The American River Contract 3A project is in the city of Sacramento along the left bank of the American River. Project activities will occur within Site 1-1 located near Interstate Business 80 between Lower American River miles 3.8 and 4.2 upstream of the Sutter's Landing Regional Park. Site 1-1 is divided into 2 segments. There's an upstream segment that extends from River Mile 3.9 to 4.2 underneath and upstream of the Interstate 80 bridge. The downstream segment extends from River Mile 3.8 to 3.9 downstream of the bridge. Next slide, please. The American River Contract 3A project will provide approximately 3,000 feet of levee improvements, bank protection by installing multiple erosion protection measures within the Lower American River. Other construction considerations within the site include construction staging, haul routes, and stockpile locations. Construction for the project is anticipated to begin in the fall or winter of 2022, with vegetation removal occurring as early as November 2022. Next slide, please. Bank protection includes launchable rock, planting benches, soil-filled embankment revetment, and in-stream woody material throughout the site. The launchable rock toe is designed to deploy a layer of riprap to cover the eroded channel surface to inhibit further erosion. Planting benches filled with soil will be placed above the launchable rock toe to provide aquatic and terrestrial habitat at a variety of flow conditions. The top of the planting bench would be planted with larger canopy trees to provide more shaded riverine habitat. Soil-filled levee embankment revetment comprised of 70% riprap and 20% soil. It will be sized to remain stable during high flow events. In-stream woody material consisting of mature trees with root wads and canopies will be installed on the land side of the launchable rock toe to provide habitat for juvenile salmonids. Vegetation removal for earthwork and placement of revetment will result in the loss of terrestrial and aquatic habitat. Mitigation for impacts on salmonid and riparian habitats would be achieved with a combination of on-site riparian plantings and off-site compensatory mitigation. Next slide, please. Through project design and refinement, the Army Corps and the board identified project modification and details that were not analyzed in the GRR. The Army Corps and the board have prepared a supplemental EIR-EA to analyze the potential environmental impacts of the project. The supplemental EIR-EA includes a series of avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures to reduce the effects to less than significant. However, there are still temporary, significant, and unavoidable impacts that cannot be reduced to less than significant with mitigation. Next slide, please. There are a total of 4 resource areas in which potentially significant and unavoidable impacts are expected to occur. Visual resources will experience temporary, significant, and unavoidable impacts due to the presence of construction equipment. Vegetation and wildlife will experience a short-term impact that is significant and unavoidable due to vegetation removal. These impacts will be reduced to less than significant in the long run with creation of habitat. However, the reestablishment of vegetation will take many years to provide habitat of a comparable value. Temporary impacts to transportation are considered significant and unavoidable due to an increase in the volume of construction-related traffic on local roadways and highways in the project area. Recreational facilities, including portions of the American River Parkway, will experience temporary closures. Recreational opportunities near the project area may be temporarily diminished due to noise, visual effects, odors, and air pollutants. These disruptions will result in temporary, significant, and unavoidable impacts to recreation. Next slide, please. The draft supplemental EIR-EA for the American River Contract 3A project was circulated for a 45-day public review period between April 13th and May 27th, 2022, with a virtual public meeting being held on May 5th, 2022. A total of 14 comment letters were received during the review period, including comments from the California State Lands Commission, the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District, the Sacramento County Department of Regional Parks, excuse me, Sacramento County Department of Transportation, the City of Sacramento Public Works Transportation Division, Save the American River Association, Friends of Paradise Beach, and 6 individual citizens. Additionally, 18 comments were received during the public meeting. In general, the comments were related to biological resources, transportation and circulation, and recreation. Responses to all comments received are included in Appendix G of the final EIR-EA. Next slide, please. Board staff has prepared a statement of findings, a statement of overriding considerations, and an MMRP pursuant to CEQA for the project. Next slide, please. Board staff recommends that the board adopt Resolution 2022-28 for the American River Contract 3A project. The adoption of the resolution will certify the final supplemental EIR-EA, will adopt the statement of findings, statement of overriding considerations, and adopt the MMRP. We'll also approve the American River Contract 3A project and delegate authority to the executive officer to execute the notice of determination. Next slide, please. That concludes the overview of the American River Contract 3A project. We have, again, Alessia Ciclari and Miles Claret from DWR's Flood Projects Branch, available virtually to answer any questions. Board staff also requests that the board take action on this item before we resume our presentation.
Thank you. Board members have any questions, comments? Could you perhaps go back to the slide that shows the action?
Yes.
None of us have to say it again. It's a lot of things in this resolution. Anyone in the audience wish to provide comment, make an observation, ask a question? If you're behind our speaker, you have to put your hand to the side. Maybe there is no one there. Any hands up? No. All right, then the action is before us. We are requested to adopt Resolution 2022-28. Who's making the motion? Is there a motion? Motion by member Johnson, seconded by member Grego. One more chance to talk. Please call the roll.
Board Member Ramirez. Board Member Grego. Yes. Board Member Countryman.
Yes.
Board Member Bosler. Secretary Johnson. Vice President Belines. Aye. President Dolan.
Yes. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay.
Now we're on F. As in
Yes. Here to present
final.
agenda item 10F, Jennifer Callis. We'll be continuing our presentation for the Sacramento River East Levee Contract 4 project.
Contract 4. How many total contracts?
Oh, today?
Well,
or-
3 today, 3 of them today, but a lot, just say a lot.
A lot.
Nobody wants me to delay this, so keep going.
Again, I'm Jen Callis, and I'm Board Environmental Staff. I will be providing a project summary and CEQA update for the Sacramento River East Levee Contract 4 project, or Sorrel C4.
Can you put that up a little bit?
Better?
Much, thank you.
The informational briefing for this project was presented at the September 2022 board meeting. Next slide, please. The Sorrel C4 project is located in Sacramento County along the east levee of the Sacramento River from approximately the I Street Bridge in downtown Sacramento to the town of Freeport.
It's a big one.
Construction will occur within 4 reaches referred to as reaches D through G. Reach D is located from Richards Boulevard by the I Street Bridge to just north of the Little Pocket area. Reach E is located in the Little Pocket area. Reach F is in the Pocket Greenhaven area. Finally, Reach G is located along State Route 160 from Pocket to the town of Freeport. Next slide, please. The project consists of levee improvements, including approximately 12,844 feet of levee raises, cutoff walls, remediation at one isolated utility location or window, a seepage stability berm, a flood wall raise, and a flashboard retrofit. The project also includes potential staging areas, borrow sites and disposal sites, municipal drainage system pipe removal and replacement, and necessary utility relocations and removals from construction. Vegetation and tree removal is anticipated to occur over a 3 to 5 week period between November 2022 and February 2023. Construction is anticipated to be completed within 1 construction season from March 2023 to December 2023. Next slide, please. Within Reach D, construction consists of an approximately 945-foot-long levee raise just north of the I Street Bridge and an approximately 55-foot-long jet grout cutoff wall near the Pioneer Bridge. Next slide, please. A total of 1,719 feet of improvements are proposed within Reach E, including approximately 1,107 feet of soil bentonite cutoff wall and approximately 612 feet of jet grout cutoff wall. These improvements are at the north end of the Little Pocket neighborhood near Rio Lane and the Westin Hotel. Next slide, please. Within Reach F, approximately a 213-foot-long jet grout cutoff wall segment will be constructed at the confluence of the Pocket Canal and the Sacramento River near Sump 132. Next slide, please. Within Reach G, construction activities include approximately 12,227 feet of improvements. These improvements include a levee raise adjacent to the Freeport Boulevard and Lynn Robbie off-leash dog park, an inset stability berm or utility window remediation near Consumnes River Boulevard, cutoff walls located throughout the site from Bill Conlin Sports Complex to Cliffs Marina, remediation of an existing flood wall raise at Cliffs Marina, a flashboard retrofit at Cliffs Marina, and a seepage stability berm at the North Beach Lake Levee. Next slide, please. The Army Corps and the board prepared a supplemental EIR EA to fully analyze the potential environmental impacts of the project. The Sorrel C4 project supplemental EIR EA includes a series of avoidance, minimization, and mitigation measures to reduce the effects of the project to less than significant. However, there are still significant and unavoidable impacts that cannot be reduced with mitigation. Next slide, please. There are a total of 4 resource areas in which potentially significant and unavoidable impacts are expected to occur. Visual resources will experience significant and unavoidable impacts due to the presence of equipment and construction activities that will change the existing visual character within the project area. In addition, several work and staging areas are located along the state and county designated portion of State Route 160, which is a designated scenic highway. Construction of the proposed project will impact approximately 2.75 acres of riparian canopy. Long-term impacts will be reduced to less than significant with mitigation, including the creation of new habitat. However, the project will have temporary and significant unavoidable impacts on vegetation and wildlife resources due to the removal of vegetation and the amount of time it will take for the compensation habitat to provide value. City parks and boat launch facilities, including Garcia Bend Boat Launch, Miller Park Marina, and Cliffs Marina, will experience limited access during construction. In addition, bicycle trails along the Sacramento River Parkway and on-street bicycle routes will experience temporary closures and/or detours. This will result in temporary, significant, and unavoidable impacts to recreation. Short-term traffic and circulation impacts are considered significant and unavoidable due to construction-generated trips affecting major highways and local surface streets. Next slide, please. The draft supplemental EIR-EA for the Sorrel C4 project was circulated for a 45-day public review period from June 15th to August 1st, 2022. In addition, a virtual public meeting was held on July 13th, 2022. During this time, 7 comment letters were received. Letters were received from the City of Sacramento, the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Sacramento County Department of Transportation, the State Lands Commission, the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District, and an interested member of the public. Comments received included questions and clarifications regarding recreation, water quality, air quality, transportation and circulation, aesthetic and visual resources, cultural and socioeconomic impacts. Comments and responses are included in Appendix E of the final environmental document. Next slide, please. Board staff has prepared a statement of findings, a statement of overriding considerations, and an MMRP pursuant to CEQA for the project. Next slide, please. Board staff recommends that the board adopt Resolution 2022-27. Adoption of the resolution will certify the supplemental EIR-EA. It will adopt the statement of findings, the statement of overriding considerations, and the MMRP. Will also approve the Sacramento River East Levee Contract 4 project and delegate the authority to the executive officer to execute the notice of determination. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation. Hiral Doshi and Kalia Schuster are available virtually from DWR's Flood Projects branch to answer any questions you may have, as they have been assisting the board with project management.
Are those 2 photos on the left of the screen projects underway or projects completed?
This is, they're photos from the 3 projects we went over today.
Okay. Thank you. Just curious. Board members, any questions, comments? I'll ask again if you go back to the slide with the action. Anyone in the audience wish to provide input, questions, observations, comments? No hands raised. Anyone online? Any hands raised? No hands raised. We're ready for action. We are requested to adopt Resolution 2022-27. Motion by Member Grego. Second by
I'll second.
Hunterman. We're also shy this afternoon. Last chance. Please call the roll.
Board Member Ramirez.
Aye.
Board Member Grego.
Yes.
Board Member Countryman.
Yes.
Board Member Bosler. Secretary Johnson. Vice President Beline.
Aye.
President Dolan.
Trying to even it up. Yes. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
President Dolan?
Nice presentations. Thank you.
I just made a brief comment. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the staff for all the work. I know that we saw this before and we went through it again today. And there's a lot of people that live in these places, and there's a lot of paper behind all this. And especially when we're the lead agency, it's not just taking the action, but it's the commitments that come with the responsibility. And I know that you guys are on top of that. And I just wanted to make sure we pointed that out because that was pretty quick in the grand scheme of things. But it's only quick because of all the work that was done in advance. So just wanted to recognize that and thank you.
Well said. Does anyone disagree with that? Very complex multi-year project in a highly urbanized area with a lot of very vocal folks. And the disruption to some people during construction is tough. So you've moved along very well. Thank you. All right, we are on to item 10G, as in good. This is information for us to brief us on the transfer of operation and maintenance responsibilities, Sacramento Riverbank Protection and Closa County. And Mike Zalazzo.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, President Dolan, members of the board. My name is Mike Salazzo. I'm a senior engineer with the Flood System Improvement Branch of the board. I'll be presenting item 10G, which is an informational briefing regarding the transfer of operation and maintenance responsibilities to the associated local maintaining agencies for 2 sites within the federally authorized Sacramento Riverbank Protection Project within units 130 and 135 of the Sacramento River Flood Control Project. Next slide, please. Yeah, so let's begin with an overview. The briefing is intended to inform the board of a request from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to accept completed work within the project and to transfer the O&M operation maintenance to the local maintaining agencies. The 2 sites we're discussing today are shown in the table along with the associated LMA. The site within Unit 130 is located on the right or west bank of the Sacramento River at River Mile 114.5, so it's SAC 114.5R. And that's going to be transferred to the Sacramento River West Side Levee District. The site within the Unit 135 is located on the Sutter Bypass left or east bank, and that's why it's SBP 0.4L. And that's going to be transferred to the California Department of Water Resources Sutter Maintenance Yard. Their future contemplated action for the board is expected to take the form of adopting a resolution and a letter transferring the O&M responsibility for each LMA.
Mr. Zalazzo, I'm going
Yes.
to interrupt just very briefly. Member Griego needed to leave, put money in the meter, so she'll be gone for a few minutes.
Okay. Did you want me to keep going or should I pause?
No, keep going.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that information, President Dolan. We can move on to the next slide, please.
Just for the record.
Okay, so the project is located, well, these project sites are located along or within the Sacramento River Valley near Yuba City. You can see on the left. The map on the right shows the 2 sites circled in red. Site 114.5R on the bottom is on the Sacramento River, about 7 miles southeast of Grimes, about 4 miles downstream of the Tisdale Weir. And it's about 1,500 feet in length. That's in Colusa County. The site to the north along the Sutter Bypass is located about 4 miles west of the community of Sutter. In Sutter County, it's about 365 feet in length. And the site improvements consist mainly of quarry stone and in-stream wood material to prevent erosion of the levee embankment. And to give you an idea of the scope of the work. Next slide, please. So a couple slides on the background of the overall project. The board or board staff has received notices from the Army Corps of Engineers for both sites in July, requesting that the board conduct or continue conducting operation maintenance work. The DWR has reviewed The notice, along with as-built drawings and other project documents, including the revised supplemental O&M manual, and has recommended accepting and transferring that responsibility to the LMA. And the board staff received that recommendation earlier this month. Finally, the board has assurance agreements with the LMA, and this one was it's in 1984, and those are in place to help provide for the LMAs to take over the O&M responsibilities for these sites. Next slide, please. So the overall Sacramento River Bank Protection Project is intended to improve stability of the banks of the Sacramento River and prevent erosion under high winter flows, typically by placing stone revetment and flattening the embankment slopes. The project was initially authorized by the Flood Control Act of 1960, but was supplemented by the Phase 2 authorization in 1974, and then the board and the federal government entered into an agreement in 1984 for the project for Phase 2 improvements. The board adopted a mitigated negative declaration in 2009 for 25 sites that were identified in need of repair, and which included the 2 sites discussed today. The construction of those 2 sites was completed in 2009, and the board has received similar packages, similar requests last year in September, and then earlier this year in July and August. Next slide, please. Here's a typical cross-section of the repair sites within the Sacramento Riverbank project. This one is specific to site 114.5 on the Sacramento River. The repair work begins with lower slope quarry stone for erosion protection, then soil-filled quarry stone to provide a medium for vegetative growth along the slope protection. There is a riparian bench in between to provide aquatic habitat during low-flow summer months. Next slide, please. So the next steps on this request is for board staff to bring an approval package to the board to consider at a future meeting, which would recommend the acceptance of the completed work to transfer the O&M responsibility to the LMAs through adopting a resolution, and to delegate to the executive officer the authority to sign and send the transfer letter. That concludes the presentation for today. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding this informational briefing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. The reason I told you to go ahead is that this is information, and Member Griego's homework is to listen to it. And you did prepare a written report that's very informative as well. So board members have any questions? This is going to be ready for approval November 18th. Something else goes on during that meeting as well. Mr. Ramirez.
And it could be answered now if we know, or it can be answered later as part of the presentation in the future. The fund source for the department to take on the responsibility for O&M. We know the fund source, and if not, we can have it come back as we're part of the regular item.
Oh, where's money coming for this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the answer for that one, but I can get the answer for you.
We're hoping it's WRDA. Stack Bank. For something that was authorized in 1960?
Right, there's the
How long does it go on? I know it's been renewed.
Right, so I'll have to check
All right.
because I know the local maintaining agency is doing the work for one of the sites, and the state is doing the work for the other. But I'll go ahead and try and check on those funding sources for each of those entities for you.
Okay. I think that's out of curiosity, but yes. Okay. Well, we'll put that before us for sure, all of us, on November 18th. Any questions about this information for future action? Member Beisler.
I have a broader, more context setting question. And I'm the new person, so I'm going to ask it. What are the criteria for these kinds of transfers and decisions to change from local maintenance to the state maintenance? I need a little more understanding of how we prioritize taking over the maintenance of certain levees.
Well, there isn't exactly a criteria, at least for these sites. It's once work is completed, it can be transferred to the local maintaining agencies by the board. These entities do the maintenance work on behalf of the board. So we just try to make sure we can accept the responsibility and transfer that over, if that helps.
The Central Valley Flood Protection Board is the successor agency of many others since 1902 to be the non-federal sponsor of federal projects that occur within the state plan of flood control. And so that's how we get that. When it is done and it's done to conformance of the construction standards, then we transfer it to a local entity to be the operation and maintenance on an ongoing basis. So
This
if
is
they
getting
meet the
transferred
construction,
back.
yeah, if they meet the
That's thing I'm
construction
really
standards, it
confused
does that.
about.
Well, during construction, it's us.
Okay. Oh, so we're going to put this under construction soon.
It's constructed.
It's being transferred to the MO.
It's been repaired, so the construction is done. So now we make the findings and transfer it essentially back to them for the operation and maintenance.
I thought it was to us.
Does that help?
This is the opposite, isn't it?
Well, yes, but there's a maintaining agency called the Center Maintenance Yard. So they will take on operation and maintenance.
So if I could add some context, the site along the Sutter bypass is located in an area that's under the O&M authority of the Department of Water Resources. So they have the responsibility to operate and maintain that area of the flood control system.
I think Member Johnson had a good point. Let's have a chart of how that happens at the next meeting. Mr. Countryman.
Follow this correctly. Construction was completed in 2009, is that correct?
That's correct, Board Member Countryman.
Why does it take 13 years?
The Army Corps has been going through a backlog of sites over the last several years, and they've reached to the point to transfer this site over to the board.
Basically waiting for the Corps to provide the O&M manual, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That was quicker than 1960 to now. All right. Mr. Zalazo, you have some questions to answer the next time or intervene with a memo or email, okay? And this will be for board action to complete this matter on November 18th. Any other comments, questions, observations, board members? None. Audience disappeared except for our staff. No hands raised. Okay, we'll be moving on as we move to end our meeting. Item 11 is to acknowledge that we have received updated reports from our board's administration, operations branch, flood system improvement branch, environmental services and land management, flood planning and programs. Thank you all for putting these together. We do read. There will be a time after we adopt the plan and have a breather that you'll be coming up one by one to give us a presentation. You're only allowed 4 PowerPoint slides, however. Okay, board comments and committee updates. Member Grego? Member Countryman, welcome back to the United States. Vice President Valines? Member Ramirez? Been working on the resolution. Secretary Johnson? Member Boslow? You joined us. That's an update.
That is the update.
Good to have
That is
you.
the update.
I did a few things. I was a member of a panel on the symposium called Drought to Flood. Very interesting morning, right here with problems with the sound system. How about that? But we weren't in charge. And then this week, Executive Officer Backus, Chief Engineer Wright, joined me. We traveled to Stockton for a Smith Canal Gates Project event and ceremony. And a big thanks from that community to many entities, including the board, United States Army Corps of Engineers, and particularly Senator Eggman for getting that gap money obligated so the project could be completed. It was a lovely event. And then yesterday, Water Education Foundation had their renewed annual forum. It had been virtual the last 2 years, so it was a very informative day. Upcoming is a few of us as possible, and you'll get some more information. We'll go to the Yuba Goldfields for a site visit, and then Chowchilla East Side Bypass, a little bit longer trip, but very important to see projects that are needed and may or may not be underway in the San Joaquin Valley. So a lot of traveling. Upcoming board meetings. The coordinating committee in November will be online only. One of the coordinating committees coming up, and I don't know if it's November, I think it's January, is going to be a really good presentation on options regarding flood insurance, but I don't think it's the one in November. And then we'll be back November 18th to do plan adoption. So bring the ribbon cutting and then board workshop on December 9th. If it's all right with you, I would like to hold perhaps a 10-minute closed session. Okay, couple things I want to talk about. The closed session are just two of the potential items. It's pursuant to Government Code Authority 11126, et cetera, to consider the appointment, recruitment of the executive officer, and where's the one? E, as in every, pursuant to Government Code Section 11126, to have a brief discussion of potential litigation. So at this point, the public meeting will recess, and I will ask the members of staff and audience to leave the room. For 10 minutes, we'll call you back so we can close the meeting. The executive officer and the board's counsel will stay with the board. So as soon as you leave, we can do it and you can come back. We are recessed. The board will reconvene. We conducted a closed session on a personnel matter and potential litigation. We didn't take any action. It was updates. We have nothing to report other than what I just said. So we have completed our meeting. And I want to say for the record that this board is going to adjourn this meeting in thanks and in memory of Mike Christman, who served many roles in the state of California, but most notably as a Secretary of California Natural Resources from 2003 to 2010. He did many other things. He was a really fine person and a wonderful leader in the state of California. And so we send our condolences to his family and adjourn in his honor. Meeting adjourned.